Good evening, everybody, and welcome to Carving It Up Live right here on Twitter, as well as the Carving It Up YouTube channel and the Gryd Network YouTube channel. As always, I'm Bryson Carver. We have got a great Friday show. We always have a great Friday show during football season, but this one in particular, Darion Hopkins, the newest member of the Gryd Network, will be stopping by in about a half hour for our new Friday segment, which we debuted a couple weeks ago, The Vol View, at 6:30 Eastern, 3:30 Pacific. Don't miss it. Tennessee, big game against Florida this weekend. Very excited to discuss with my man Darion, who happens to be a big Vols fan. Shout out to all of the higher-ups, whoever they may be. I know exactly who they are, but whoever they may be at the Gryd Network, for adding not just a very talented individual to the network, but also a guy who's obviously a very smart guy because he's a Vols fan. So props to Darion. Very excited to have him on the show in about a half hour. Also going to get into Aaron Rodgers was on the Pat McAfee show earlier today, his first interview since the Achilles injury. It was fitting that he gave it to McAfee, given that he does Tuesday interviews with McAfee every week. And he gave us, in typical Aaron Rodgers fashion, he gave us some good sound bites. That's one thing. I've been critical of Aaron in the past. The man is a content provider. And I do love that. I'd rather Aaron Rodgers than a Kawhi Leonard who doesn't talk, okay? So props to Aaron. Going to talk about that. Also, Jay Norvell. That is not a name I thought I would be discussing on this particular episode of Carving It Up Live, but he really put his foot in his mouth. If you haven't heard by now, you'll hear later what he said about Deion Sanders in Colorado. Very interesting. We'll get into that later. And at the end of today's show, it's Friday. What are we talking about? Week 2, NFL predictions, including Upset of the Week, Bryson's Bleak Bet, and If I Were a Bettin Man. 2 of the 3 I'm looking to bounce back on. I got the Upset of the Week right last week. I picked Miami to beat LA. They did. I feel great about my Upset of the Week going into Week 2. Again, there's not a whole lot of upset opportunities, by the way, just because there's not that many big lines. I mean, Buffalo and the Raiders is a big line. Jets and Cowboys is a big line. There's not that many of them, though. So very interested to get into those, the Sunday predictions for Week 2 of this NFL season. But first, so the Philadelphia Eagles beat the Minnesota Vikings last night by a final score of 34-28 in the first official Thursday night game of the season on Amazon Prime. Michaels, Herbstreit on the call. And I'm hearing today, watch the game straight through, obviously. I'm seeing a lot of today, hearing a lot of today through various media outlets, whether it be television, radio, print, podcast, whatever the case may be, that, man, Philadelphia has not looked all that impressive through their first 2 games of the season. They are 2-0, but kind of an ugly win on the road against New England. You open up 16-0, you're kind of rolling, got a pick 6 there, and you end up winning that game by 5, having to stop a Mac Jones-led offense at the very end there in Foxborough. And then 4 days later, in the home opener, a home opener in which, before the first quarter even concludes, in classic Philadelphia fashion, the Boo Birds come. It's Philadelphia, why are we shocked? But anyways, they kind of get off to a slow start, some turnovers a little bit. Jalen Hurts threw a really bad interception over the middle of the field, but they bounce back. Minnesota had some terrible turnovers. We'll get into that aspect of it as we go on through this segment. But Philadelphia ends up winning the game 34-28, in large part led by their incredible, unstoppable run game. The Philadelphia Eagles on the night against Minnesota, albeit not against a great defense, or at least a defense is trying to find itself, but Minnesota ran the ball 48 times for 259 yards, 3 touchdowns. By the way, 5 yards average on the ground, so Minnesota could not stop them all night long. And that's kind of the point I want to get at, is this, I feel like we are, listen, how you react to something is completely based off your expectations. Philadelphia's coming off a season in which they had the number 1 seed. Jalen Hurts finished second in the running, in the voting for MVP behind Patrick Mahomes. And Philadelphia got to the Super Bowl, lost what was a Super Bowl classic to the Kansas City Chiefs, who are the NFL's budding dynasty. And so there's a lot of expectations. Sure, you lose both coordinators. Sure, you lose some players defensively, but you still have the core of this group. You still have Jalen Hurts. You have Devontae Smith. You have A.J. Brown. You have a great offensive line. Defensively, you've got probably still a top 3 front in football. And Nick Sirianni, while I don't think he's exactly Andy Reid or Mike Tomlin, has proven himself to be a solid NFL head coach. The expectations rise. I'm not disappointed in the slightest with Philadelphia because this is kind of what I expected from them, not just to start the season, but in terms of, and again, you don't want to overreact. Again, only the Vikings and Eagles, only 2 teams in the NFL to this point to play 2 games. But my expectation for Philly is, look, They're really talented. I think they're well coached. They're good situationally. Jalen Hurts is one of the best leaders in the NFL. They've got talent all over the place. They play in a brutal division. They'll finish second in that division. And I think best case scenario that they're their best team in the conference. I think Dallas and San Francisco are neck and neck. I give the Niners the edge for the time being. And it's going to be between kind of Philly and Detroit for that third place spot. We saw Detroit against Kansas City. You guys know I believe in Detroit all offseason long. I have no reason to believe that the Lions, barring injury, knock on wood, that my expectations for Detroit should change in a negative way. And so listen, when you go to a Super Bowl, when you have sustained success, which Philadelphia has, incredibly with multiple head coaches, multiple quarterbacks, it's kind of like an Alabama syndrome where Nick Saban in Alabama's lost a lot of coordinators, and eventually you get to a point now where all of his good coordinators are successful head coaches, and you're having Kirby Smart beating him and Jimbo Fisher beating him, and you got Steve Sarkisian beating him just last weekend in Tuscaloosa. Like, that's part of the process of being a successful team. Now, Philly's not the dynasty that Alabama is, but it's the same sort of energy. And so I think that for Philadelphia, that's going to be the question moving forward, is whether or not they can replace those pieces. We understand Shane Steichen, I think, was a massive loss, given that what he did for Jalen Hurts from a developmental standpoint, and now what he hopes to do in Indianapolis with Anthony Richardson. Again, the way I view it in the NFL is, and if we get to December and Philly's still kind of struggling in the passing game a little bit defensively, they're not great. But as for the sort of towards the defense, didn't we kind of say all of last season? Didn't we kind of say all off season, especially when they were losing defensive pieces, that they kind of feasted off of bad quarterbacks last year? And now, by the way, not just your safeties are gone, now your linebacking core, Nakobe Dean's down, your linebacking core is really thin. And so that's another, sort of deficiency you're trying to deal with. Mac Jones, who I've religiously stated is a backup quarterback in the NFL, played solid. Then you got Kirk Cousins, who I've always said is about the 12th, 13th best quarterback in the NFL. Kirk Cousins had a great night. You say, his numbers are kind of empty. Kirk Cousins wasn't the reason that Minnesota, outside of the one strip sack, Kirk Cousins wasn't the reason that Minnesota just kept turning the ball over and over and over. All the the fumbles on punt returns and on running plays. Like, that's not Kirk's fault. Kirk went up and down the field on those guys. By the way, just as far as the scheme is concerned, here's what I couldn't figure out. So Philadelphia takes advantage of the turnovers, overwhelmingly so. They're up 27-7. And Minnesota's just going up and down the field. And it's not because Philly's playing a prevent defense or anything. I mean, it isn't like they're up 20 with 2 minutes to go. And it's just keep everything in front of you. Let's just get this game over with. 20 is listen, this is the same Minnesota Vikings team that came back from a 33-point deficit against the Indianapolis Colts. So it's not like they're a stranger to mind-blowing comebacks. And so for Philadelphia, my question was, why are you singling up Justin Jefferson? That's probably the best receiver in football, at least in my eyes, although Tyreek Hill's putting up a pretty compelling case for that title. But they're not giving I'm saying they're not giving more attention to Justin Jefferson than they are Jordan Addison, the young kid that they drafted out of USC. And I think Jordan Addison could be really good. He's no Justin Jefferson. So defensively, the scheme was what was a little odd. And again, the secondary is a point of concern, a point of weakness. And I said that for Philly coming into the season. But you know what they did? They did what any smart team, any great team does. And I do believe Philadelphia is a great team. I do believe Philadelphia's a contender. I just don't think they're on the level of San Francisco or Dallas. Can they beat them? Sure, they can beat them on a one-game basis, and that's all the playoffs require. I just think today they're the third best, fourth best team in the NFC behind Dallas, San Francisco, Detroit. We're neck and neck with Detroit as we sit here today, but you get the point. What did Philadelphia do? Minnesota makes the comeback. Kirk Cousins is kind of in a rhythm. Justin Jefferson's playing well. He's getting the football, making plays, recovering from what was a terrible fumble in the first half. And what does Philadelphia do? What was the score? It's a 6-point game at this particular point in the game. Yes, 27-21 Philly. Minnesota scores a touchdown. There's 7 minutes, 41 seconds left. So game is far from over. What does Philadelphia do? DeAndre Swift, 7 yards. DeAndre Swift, 4 yards. DeAndre Swift, 3 yards. DeAndre Swift, 2 yards. Then Jalen Hurts completes a pass to A.J. Brown. Big third down conversion, gain of 12. DeAndre Swift, big 43-yard run. DeAndre Swift, 2 yards. DeAndre Swift, 2 more yards, touchdown. They know, and like any great team, what do they have? An identity. Any great team in the NFL, any great team in sports, the one thing they all have in common, They know what they are. They know what they're not. I've said this about Nick Sirianni. I don't think he's some genius head coach. I probably wouldn't put him in the top 15 today. What Nick Sirianni did is what some coaches don't do for pride purposes, but he said, you know what, I'm going to put winning, I'm going to put the organization first and foremost. What did he do exactly? Remember he took the job 2 years ago? Remember he had the bad press conference where he looks like he's reading off a teleprompter. It's kind of clunky. And Philadelphia got off, I think it was to a 3-6 start in 2021. Hurts is kind of looking shaky, and the defense isn't always playing very well. And situationally, they're not stellar. And what did Nick Sirianni do? He said, you know what? I know where I'm good at, what I'm good at, and what I'm not. I'm going to hand the play calling duties to Shane Steichen. Philadelphia took off, made the playoffs. The next year, they made the Super Bowl. Now, Shane Steichen's not in that building anymore, but if there's any team, there's any coach who's self-aware, maybe not self-aware in the sense of, beating his chest on the sideline. He's a little more unconventional in that regard in terms of being an up front and center head coach. We're not used to seeing that, certainly in the National Football League, but in terms of his coaching philosophy, he knows what he is. Philadelphia knows what they are. That's why they've been one of the most successful franchises in the last 2 decades with multiple Super Bowl appearances and a title to show for it. With multiple quarterbacks, multiple head coaches. This organization knows what they are. A power-running football team. Now, does that have its limits? You're darn right it does. As we know, the last 4 Super Bowl champions, none of them, I shouldn't say none of them, one of them was ranked in the top 20 in rushing, and that was Kansas City last year. I think it was last year's Chiefs team who were ranked 20th. So barely in the top 20. You don't need to have a great running game to win the Super Bowl. But Philadelphia knows what they're great at, and they have a quarterback who, if they need him to throw, if they need him to make plays with his arm, didn't we just see him in that Super Bowl against Patrick Mahomes? Many argue he outplayed Mahomes, and Mahomes played amazing, played perfect in the second half of that game and won the MVP of that football game. Philadelphia knows what they are and what they're not, and what they are is a very talented football team, a very physical team up front on both sides of the ball, and they're going to be a handful. So I don't think it's a situation where with the skies, again, they are 2-0. And at the end of the day, the NFL is not the AP poll in college football. You don't need style points. You don't need to, if you're playing a bad team, or I shouldn't say necessarily a bad team, but like a D2 team, you don't need to beat them by 50. You just need to win. Just need to win. Doesn't matter about style points. Doesn't matter about strength of schedule or record, all that. Just need to win. I mean, the Minnesota Vikings won last year, won 13 games with a negative point differential. It obviously cost them the playoffs. It didn't cost them in getting to the playoffs. Philadelphia will be fine. Philadelphia is well coached. Philadelphia has an excellent roster. By the way, they get 10 days off. They get to go to Tampa Bay. 11 days off, and they get to go play Tampa Bay on the road in week 3. They'll beat Tampa Bay. Eagles are going to be fine. I have no concerns whatsoever. Other than the fact they're not great against competent quarterbacks. Even Mac Jones, who I don't even know is quite that, went up and down the field on them in the second half. And Kirk Cousins looked awesome in the second half against this Eagles defense. That's my only point of concern. But in terms of what they know they are or aren't, they're as secure as any team in football. So I'm not worried about Philadelphia moving forward. They are kind of what I said they were. They're a top 3-4 team in the NFC. They're not going to be quite as good as they were a year ago, but they'll absolutely be in the mix once the playoffs roll around, once we get to January, obviously, if their key pieces are able to stay healthy. So I'm not terribly concerned about Philadelphia. By the way, again, Carving Up Live, feel free to make your opinions known in the comments section. We would appreciate that, obviously. Got NFL predictions later in the show, NFL Week 2, Sunday's action, because obviously we had the Thursday night game last night. I did pick Philly, although I took Minnesota +6, and they got that late touchdown with under 2 minutes left. I'm like, yes! Okay, so I win in both instances. I thought it'd be closer. Again, the final score doesn't indicate how much Philadelphia kind of controlled that football game, particularly in the second half. But, yeah, there you go. So, for Minnesota briefly, and then I'll get to Aaron Rodgers, who spoke to Pat McAfee today. So, Minnesota's 0-2 now, a bad home loss to Tampa, and they go on the road and they got beat by a better football team. It's as simple as that. Philadelphia is a better football team than Minnesota. I think that goes without saying. Some people are dancing on their grave. I shouldn't say I don't think there's that much hate for the Minnesota Vikings unless you're a Packers, Lions, or Bears fan or a Kirk Cousins, hater. I've been a Kirk Cousins realist. I would not consider myself a Kirk Cousins hater. Point is, Minnesota's not done. The NFC, I have to admit, albeit early in the season, is a bit better than I thought it would be. I have to say, forget the contenders, forget your Phillies, your Dallases, your San Franciscos, your Detroits. Green Bay looks better than I thought. Again, it's only 1 week and they played Chicago, but Jordan Love played well. Atlanta's defense looks pretty solid, and so does New Orleans. So the middle of the NFC is a little bit better than I thought. I think Seattle will get it back up on his feet within the next few weeks, so that they should be fine when it's all said and done. Philadelphia is not done, okay? They've got a Chargers team next week. You're like, oh, the Chargers got more talent than the Vikings. Yeah, they also have a clueless head coach. Minnesota, I think I would almost give them the edge to win that game. They got a young Carolina team who they're better than. Then they play Mahomes with the Chiefs. That's a different story. Then they play the Bears, who they beat up on often. 49ers, that's tough. Then you got Packers, Falcons, Saints is a winnable game. Broncos, Bears again. And then they finish with Raiders, Bengals, Lions, Packers, Lions again. The schedule is it's nothing to laugh at. It's nothing to just look over. But again, this is a Minnesota Vikings team that was among one of the best offenses in the NFL last season. And again, I know their defense hasn't looked terribly good through the first 2 games of a season, albeit in a 5-day stretch. But it is a new defensive coordinator, Brian Flores, and we know his history, certainly dating back to his days as the head coach of the Miami Dolphins. Whenever he takes over a defensive operation, he gets it finished. He gets it in order pretty quick. So I expect Minnesota, they got time off to rest. They got a huge game against the Chargers coming up next weekend. Justin Herbert and those guys, Brian Flores will have a defensive game plan, a defensive scheme dialed up, by the time that game kicks off in Minneapolis. So, and again, I'm seeing a lot of, I saw someone say today that it's time to move off from Kirk Cousins. Well, maybe, at least if you have a backup plan in order, which, as we say here today, does not look like the Vikings do. It's last year's contract. You probably let it expire, run out. Let somebody else, a mid-tier team, maybe like an Atlanta or somebody, bid on Kirk Cousins' services, and Minnesota goes and drafts a quarterback. Again, how's that going to make Justin Jefferson and some of the young playmakers feel? That's a different question. Maybe they trade for a quarterback. Who knows? That's a question for this offseason. I don't think last night's game, my last takeaway was, Vikings need to trade Kirk Cousins. No, it was that they got beat by a more physical and, frankly, a better and, frankly, more healthy Philadelphia team. I mean, poor Minnesota had multiple tackles go down that game. What's his name? If I can pull up the news update, you had Kevin O'Connell, the head coach of the Vikings, announced that Udo, I think is how you say his last name, suffered a season-ending quad injury. So now they're thin at offensive line. They've already struggled in that department. So that's going to be a question for an immobile quarterback in Kirk Cousins moving forward. That'd be my biggest area of concern for Minnesota. But I don't think, I didn't watch last night like, oh, they're done. I think we all kind of expected them to lose to Philly last night. Now, had they got embarrassed, had they gotten beat by 25 to 30 points, maybe it's a different conversation, like, oh, okay, they're probably not ready. And I know a lot of folks are going to bring up the Kirk Cousins in primetime game. Well, the knock against Kirk Cousins in primetime is not just his record. He's won some games in primetime, but not played terribly well. So it's not just, he doesn't always win. I think he actually 500 on Thursday Night Football coming into last night's game. So he's won games, but hasn't always necessarily always played well. Check the stats. Heck, check the tape. Looked pretty good. Made some tough throws to Justin Jefferson and some of his targets. So I think that's something you gotta take into consideration as well. But I don't think there's some teams. I think if they go 0-2, like if Denver loses to Washington, they're done. They are done. They're trying to establish a culture. You cannot lose your first 2 home games of the season to Jimmy Garoppolo and Sam Howell. You cannot lose those 2 games or you are not making the playoffs. Beat up roster as is, by the way. So like certain 0-1 teams, if they lose, they are screwed. That's why I think the Jets winning last week against Buffalo, especially given the next 5 games after this, massive. Because looking at the line today, it looks like the line's gone down to 8.5, so some people, I guess, are taking the Jets and the points against the Cowboys. But that's the talent gap isn't crazy, but where the Cowboys are great, the Jets are terrible. So that's an area of concern for New York. But yeah, I think there's certain 0-1 teams that they need a win this weekend. I think Denver needs a win. Buffalo needs a win desperately. Like if Kansas City loses the Jaguars, we're all of a sudden going to come in on Monday. Yeah, Kansas City's done. Yeah, they lost to a title contender in the NFC on opening night without 2 of their 3 best players, and then they lose 10 days later to the 3rd best quarterback on planet Earth. Yeah, Kansas City's done. Some 0-1 teams, though, that's not the case. Like, I think Seattle could really use a win against Detroit. Like, that was a bad loss on the road at home against the Los Angeles Rams, so they have to bounce back for sure. like I said, hope to, in about 10 minutes or so, gonna have Darion Hopkins on pretty soon. By the way, I'm looking at this Instagram post of Kyle Shanahan and Sean McVay, who obviously coached together in Washington. How amazing is that, though? That the Washington Commanders had Kyle Shanahan and Sean McVay on their coaching staff at one point at the exact same time, and neither became the head coach. That's Dan Snyder for you. So my buddy Parnell, Commanders Demand host, just did a show, I think this morning. Did a great job, by the way. I think he's either did Commanders. Commanders Demand this morning did a great job here on the Gryd Network. So please check his stuff out on social media and here on the Gryd's YouTube channel and anywhere else you get your podcast, as well as other Commanders fans. Hey, just continue the rejoice and I don't think you guys are gonna make the playoffs this year or anything, but the rule of Dan Snyder has come to an end. So you can. I don't know how good the new guy is gonna be, but at least that aspect of your misery has concluded. The bad news is you're in a brutal division with two title contenders with the Philadelphia Eagles and the Dallas Cowboys. So in the short term, it's not great, but they'll be fine in the long term. Okay, so to Aaron Rodgers now. So Aaron Rodgers was on the Pat McAfee show today, just a few hours ago. Pat McAfee now on ESPN, obviously. By the way, did you see McAfee's guest list today? I watched about half the show. He had Stephen A. Smith, Deion Sanders, because they're in Boulder, Colorado. Pat McAfee's there for College Game Day tomorrow. Obviously, Game Day's in Boulder. He had Stephen A., Deion Sanders, The Rock, and then cap it off. Oh, yeah, by the way, Aaron Rodgers' first interview since the Achilles injury on Monday night, he stops by. So he stopped by the McAfee show for about a half hour. It was a really good interview. Aaron seemed to be in good spirits, which is obviously great to see. But he was asked by Pat McAfee about the rehab and about, is it worth continuing to play at this stage? You're 39, going on 40 this December. Like, is this it, or are you going to try and make another run at it? And Aaron Rodgers said, quote, "Give me all the doubts. Give me the timetables. Give me all the things you think I can, should, or would happen, because all I need, give me all the things you think can, should, or would happen, because all I need is that one extra little % of inspiration. That's all I need. Give me your doubts. Give me your prognostications, and then watch what I do." And by the way, well, let me react to that statement first. So that sort of, I sort of talked about. So Aaron posted on Instagram about a half hour, maybe less, before Wednesday's episode of Carving Up Live started. He posted on Instagram, and what did he say? Let me pull up the Instagram. Was it the night has fallen? Or the dawn, something about the dawn or the night. I forgot what it was. Aaron is a master of words. Oh, yeah, he said, "The night is darkest before the dawn, and I shall rise yet again." That was his Instagram post from the other day. So that told me, okay, he's coming back. That's not to say, okay, I'm going to retire, and I'm going to come back and be a killer Jeopardy host. I know Ken Jennings is in that role, but remember Aaron guest hosted for a short time following the following the passing of the late, great Alex Trebek, God rest his soul. But Aaron Rodgers obviously hosted that show for a brief time a couple years back. And so I don't think that told me. Aaron's a master of words. He's kind of been a little bit of a manipulator of the media at times. We all remember the whole vaccine controversy 2 years ago. But that tells me, again, we've seen a new Aaron this year in New York. I didn't think that was a way to just mislead the media or mislead the public in any way, shape, or form. People are going to read into that and assume, okay, he's coming back. I don't think Aaron would just dupe the Jets, who he has nothing but praise for. He's had a blast in the organization. I don't think he's going to be like, "Yeah, Jets, the night is darkest before dawn, and I shall rise again. Bye." I don't think that was something Aaron was just going to do to that organization that gave up a lot for him. But Aaron went on to say, so that didn't shock me. So Aaron's saying, "Give me all the motivation I need. I'm going to get through this rehab." He's coming back. But he also said, and this is interesting. So Aaron was sort of alluding to, again, he's good at dancing around something, not necessarily addressing it head on. It's something I have criticized in the past. Now I almost find it kind of enjoyable and amusing with the Jets because it's kind of a happier Aaron. But Aaron was sort of dropping some little hints here and there, saying like, we'll just got to see what happens this season. It's like, what's he saying? So AJ Hawk, who's one of Pat McAfee's co-hosts, AJ Hawk played for the Packers with Rodgers for a long time, was a great linebacker there, and AJ Hawk straight up asked him, like, "Are you coming back this year? Because you seem to kind of be alluding to it." And Aaron Rodgers said, quote, As Kevin Garnett said, anything's possible. End quote. Obviously, Kevin Garnett said it a lot more enthusiastically than that when the Celtics won in 2008, but you get the idea. Look, as crazy as that sounds, and it does sound pretty crazy. Remember Cam Akers, albeit younger player, but playing a more physical position. Remember Cam Akers got injured in, it had to be late July, early August with the Los Angeles Rams in 2021. Ended up coming back right before the playoffs started, and in his own way contributed to them winning the Super Bowl that year. So Cam Akers, who I remember talking about in this show, he the surgery that the operation they did on him was like this new sort of technology, this new sort of procedure that had just kind of been introduced and was able to help the Achilles heal quicker. I don't know what they did. Again, I'm no surgeon. I'm not going to play one here on this podcast, but it helped Cam Akers come back much sooner than, because we think Achilles, we're like, okay, automatically 8 to 12 months. Like he's probably done a year, and that's at least what I and basically everybody assumed about Aaron Rodgers. But listen, Aaron is not as mobile as he used to be. Doesn't really have to be at this stage of his career at age 39. Still got a good arm. Still's accurate. And would you take, I don't know, let's say he comes back and he's 60 to 75% of himself. Is 60, 75% of Aaron Rodgers, even at age 39, 40, is that better than Zach Wilson? Given Zach Wilson's track record, probably. Now, is it better than Gardner Minshew? 60 to 70%, 75% of 40-year-old Aaron Rodgers, is that better than Gardner Minshew? If the Jets were to go after him from the Indianapolis Colts, probably, but it's kind of more discussion. But I remember having conversations on the show last year, even with Jets fans. I remember Alfred Parsard Jr., who's a contributor here at the Gryd, was on the show around December, around that time. I remember telling Alfred, I'm not sure Zach Wilson's an NFL quarterback. Like, I'm dead serious. Like, forget backup. I'm not so sure the man belongs in the league. Like, we were having those type of conversations in 2022. And so, has he improved? Sure, he didn't, aside from the one pick, he didn't screw it up. I mean, his defense played out of their minds against Buffalo. His receivers got open, which is kind of their job to do. They're a good receiving core. He just didn't mess it up. Got a good running game. Defense was awesome. But if you ask Zach Wilson to win the game, that's where it starts to become a little bit of a problem. This is why I said on Wednesday's show, if you're the New York Jets, you have got to pursue a quarterback, be it through a trade, be it through free agency, because almost any option is better than what you have right now in Zach Wilson. And you cannot, for the second straight year, have this great of a defense. Again, you never want to overreact to week one, but what we saw in week one is exactly what we saw all of 2022 from the New York Jets. Great defense, fast, awesome pass rush, good linebacking core, excellent secondary, excellent to elite secondary. Personally, I believe Sauce Gardner's the best corner in football. Got off to a little bit of a slow start, but he'll bounce back. He'll be fine when it's all said and done. He's a great player. Great player. You can't waste that for a second straight year. You can't. By the way, Robert Saleh, I think, has proven himself to be a very good coach in the NFL. Also, too, speaking of Saleh, he, along with Joe Douglas, the GM, probably not now that with the injury to Rodgers, probably not, but we know the NFL is a harsh business. The Jets are not historically well run. Could they be coaching for and GMing their way for their jobs this year? Probably. Again, they probably shouldn't be. It's not fair because they're the best player, the face of the franchise, went down 4 snaps into the season. But that's not off the table. If the Jets go 6-11, it's not off the table. If the Jets decide there might be a better option when it's all said and done. So, listen, if I'm New York, I'm not letting this defense, and by the way, I'm not letting these offensive skill position players who are better than they were a year ago, adding Dalvin Cook, adding guys like Alan Lazard, adding, of course, Uzama was there last year as a tight end, but you got a good running game. You can't just waste this. I get the AFC's loaded. I do. But in that 7th spot, because they're not going to beat Miami for the division now with Rodgers down. They're not. But with all the chaos around that 6-7 spot in the AFC, give them competent quarterback play, and you're telling me the Jets can't make it? Folks, the Jets, outside of a few games here or there from Mike White, and that one game against Cleveland by Joe Flacco, in which the Jets miraculously won that game, Jets didn't have a competent quarterback play all season long, and the second to last week of the season, they were in the playoff hunt. There was a point in time when they were 7-4, 7-5. Like, they were literally in the playoffs, and then they collapsed at the end because their quarterback play was atrocious. So give them an Andy Dalton. Give them a Gardner Minshew. Give them, if by some crazy chance that bad man, as Stephen A. Smith would say, he extends the bad part. You get what I'm saying. If the rehab goes well, I mean, look, Aaron's a cryptic guy, but he kind of said, anything's possible. You never know. Maybe this new Achilles technology, this Achilles surgery technology that they used on Cam Akers, who plays a much more physical in a more physically taxing position at running back, probably the most physically taxing position in football, and he was back in basically 5 months. Who's to say that maybe, just maybe, it's not off the table. Maybe the Jets are in the hunt. They're like, I don't know. I don't want to say 7-7 because that's 3 months from now. That's a quick turnaround from an Achilles. Say they're 8-8. Say they're going to that last week of the season. They're just treading water. The defense is playing amazing. They're still playing amazing in the running game. And just, Zach Wilson's just not the guy. Whoever we've got at that point, just not the guy. And Aaron goes to the front office and says, hey guys, I can play. Now, he's obviously going to have to be cleared by doctors, of course. But you're telling me the Jets will say, yeah, we'll stick with the guy who's really struggling and really is the only reason we're not in the playoffs right now, be it Zach Wilson or anybody else, Tim Boyle or anybody they could sign or trade for. And Aaron Rodgers comes back to the organization and says, hey, I'm ready to go. We got one game to get in the playoffs. Let's do this thing. Jets are historically a desperate franchise to a certain extent. You're telling me they're not. They wouldn't at least consider it. Should he be cleared by the doctors? Let me use this phrase again. It is not off the table. It's not. You can't discount it. Very interesting story, but no, it really was though great to see Aaron on McAfee show. See him again. He seemed to be in good spirits. So he talked about he's gotten, and he mentioned this in his Instagram post. He's gotten so much love and support from so many people that he used to play with and play for, whether it be, I'm sure, a lot of Packers, former teammates and coaches with the Packers and other players and otherwise, reached out to him, and he said that really meant a lot. So it's great. Of course, whether he comes back this season, it's going to be a long shot. It's intellectually dishonest to say otherwise, but it's a long shot to come back this season. But regardless if he does, come back in 2023 or not, or the next time we see him on an NFL field is September of 2024, we're obviously praying for him. We're hoping the best for him. It's going to be a tough rehab, and Achilles tends to do that, but obviously wishing the best for Aaron Rodgers, and hopefully he can get back on the field as soon as possible, looking as much like the old Aaron Rodgers, or the previous Aaron Rodgers, as we've grown accustomed to, because he's a truly spectacular player historically. I've always been more of a Brady guy, but I've never, ever, even when I've criticized Rodgers, I've never, ever denied the talent. I think he's the second most talented quarterback ever, just a spot above Marino and a spot below Mahomes. He's spectacular. So, but yeah, still waiting, hoping to get our next guest, Darion, on the show pretty soon. Apparently, he's dealing with some technical difficulties, so obviously we'll give him time to sort that out. So when he does hop on, though, we'll do the Vol View. So looking forward to that, of course. By the way, this does give me an opportunity to say this. So it's funny how some things just kind of turn around there. I wasn't even looking at Twitter. I got an alert on Twitter from, it was either Woj or Shams or both, two best NBA insiders, saying that my Golden State Warriors were going to meet with Dwight Howard, and not just necessarily the Warriors, but the GM, Mike Dunleavy Jr., and the head coach, Steve Kerr, were going to meet with Dwight Howard. It's like, oh, of course. Because first of all, I'm like, okay, I'm down. Now, he is in year 20. He's going to be in a reduced role. That goes without saying. But hasn't the criticism of the Warriors been like, man, God, they're really small. They could really use some size. Like, Looney's kind of their only big. Saric is Dario Saric is the tallest player in the Warriors, but he's a wing. He's a 4. He's a stretch 4 guy. Like, he's not gonna be your big in all likelihood. Dwight Howard gives you that size. And it's funny, I've been criticizing Dwight Howard like crazy, over the past, I don't know, few years, talking about I think he's had an overrated career. Now, his time in Orlando was unbelievable. He was dominant in Orlando. L.A., not great. Houston, Atlanta, Charlotte. It wasn't until he became a role player with the Lakers that it's like, oh, he's good as a role player. And my criticism of Dwight has overwhelmingly been that once the NBA transitioned to a more perimeter-oriented league, he didn't adjust. Like the two best bigs in the NBA. Two best centers in the NBA, because Giannis is technically a big, but we don't count him as a center. So the two best centers in the NBA. Embiid, Jokic, both can shoot. Like you got, unless you are Giannis, and even it's hurt Giannis as we saw in the playoffs, certainly in this past postseason against Miami, if you can't shoot the basketball, unless you are as dominant as Giannis is in the interior, probably the most dominant player within 5 feet of the basket since Shaq himself, you cannot be a superstar in the NBA. And that's really the day that the NBA transitioned that era was the day Dwight Howard forgets superstar. He really wasn't even a star at that point. He was just kind of good starting center. Double-double guy. Andre Drummond, if you will. And that may sound crazy. Andre Drummond and Dwight Howard, that's crazy. Numbers aren't terribly off. But, that's don't kill the messenger, okay? Apparently, let's see. So, again, we're having some technical issues with Darion Hopkins. Let's see. Hang on. Let me hit him up real quick. See if we can get him on a little later in the show. Hang on. Okay. Here we go. Here's my thing. Hold on. So I don't know how these insiders, like a Schefter or a Woj, when they're on television, because those guys, their job is hard enough. They're constantly just texting guys, and like just right there, like I'm communicating with Darion, trying to hopefully get his technical issues sorted out. How guys like Woj and Shams too, and Schefter and Ian Rappaport, they're doing television constantly, and they're still having to communicate with people, text them. I admire the heck out of that. That's incredible. So while we wait on Darion to hopefully get everything resolved, hope to have him on the show as soon as possible. I'll go and transition to what we were going to do after the Vol View, because I do think it's one that's of note. That's putting it mildly. So, Colorado Buffaloes have been the talk of college football. Deion Sanders has been the talk of college football, as is his son Shador, who's in the Heisman race, and Travis Hunter, also in the Heisman race. They're off to 2-0 start. They're ranked within the top 20 in America. In a loaded Pac-12, they're right in the thick of it. And Deion has turned the culture of this program completely upside down in a great way. And he's taken a lot of heat, a lot of criticism, and he's backed it up with results. He's done it his way, and his way has worked pretty darn well. I think it's fair to say that. Colorado plays Colorado State this weekend. So it's so big of a game that College Game Day's there. ESPN First Take was there. Pat McAfee's show was there, and a lot of media attention and press. It just continues to grow and grow and grow for Colorado. They play Colorado State. Again, let me check the line, because I think it was darn near 30, if I'm not mistaken. They're pretty big favorites over Colorado State, who's, by the way, 3-10 in their last 13 contests. The Colorado Buffaloes are 23.5-point favorites. Needless to say, Vegas likes them to win comfortably. And the head coach of the Colorado State Rams, Jay Norvell, was on his weekly coach interview show. Here's what he had to say about Coach Prime and about Colorado. Take a listen.
I sat down with ESPN today, and I don't care if they hear it in Boulder. I told them I took my hat off and I took my glasses off, and I said, when I talk to grown-ups, I take my hat and my glasses off. That's what my mother taught me.
That's a dang shame. You know what I'm saying? It's a shame. Because the fact of the matter is, when you have a Jay Norvell, by the way, for the podcast audience, those watching and listening, I'm wearing a hat and sunglasses right now. The fact of the matter is, when you have a Jay Norvell who is, again, 3-10 as Colorado State's head coach, just a week ago against Washington State, another Pac-12 opponent. All that happens, they got beat 50-24 on their home field. Seems like a story to a certain extent, does it not? This to me, and I gotta say, not to go too far in this direction, but it reminds me to a certain extent of someone who used to occupy the White House, and anytime something bad would happen, and he'd deflect, and he'd mention something that had absolutely nothing to do with the current situation at hand as a way to deflect. No, it's a sleight of hand. Look over here. Kind of gives me those vibes from Jay Norvell. I'll let you piece that together, however you so choose. Point is, Jay Norvell is not in a great position as the head coach of the Colorado Buffaloes, and why would he do this? What did he hope to accomplish through this? Because it would appear that the old guard, so to speak, of college football is not exactly thrilled with Deion Sanders' success. It would certainly appear that there's a certain way. It gives me baseball vibes about how you got to do it a certain way. You got to win and lose with class. Blah blah blah. Okay, who cares about that nonsense? You've got a Deion Sanders who walks his walk and talks his talk, and sure is a bit braggadocious as he's been throughout his NFL career. Why is that a problem? No, seriously, why is it a problem? If he's successful, if he backs him up, why is that a bad thing? I mean, it's a fair conversation to have. So, Jay Norvell, Barry Grant Jr., the co-founder of the Gryd Network, has a segment on this show every week. It's called The Dummy of the Week, and I think you've got a solid opportunity, a solid chance, my friend, to land on that list. If you're not a candidate, at the very least. So, here's what I do know is going to happen, because you had Deion Sanders after practice. I saw this soundbite yesterday. He said, okay, they made it personal. Let's go make it personal. And he was doing interviews, and he was like, hey, listen, he's just kind of downplaying a little bit. Colorado's a 23.5-point favorite. What do you say they win by? Because this isn't going to be the typical situation where a ranked team plays a bad unranked team. They go nuts in the first half to start the third quarter, and then they call the dogs off. They put the backups in, just finish the game, don't want to necessarily run up the score. I think it's perfectly well within the realm of possibility that that's exactly what primetime was going to do. And now all of a sudden, Colorado's going to score 60 against Colorado State. You heard it here first. The Colorado Buffaloes are going to drop a 60 burger on the Colorado State Rams after Jay Norvell's recent comments. As Prime said, if they want to make it personal, then let's make it personal. You even saw Deion, saw the video today, was meeting with his team, and he gave them all shades. Gave them all the sunglasses. Again, for Jay Norvell, he has every right to say whatever he wants about how his mother raised him. Okay, that's how your mother raised you. By the way, are you taking a shot at how Deion's mother raised him? Are we going to those type of personal attacks? For the record, my mom allowed me to wear a hat and sunglasses and do Carving Up Live. She has multiple signs of the past, so shout out to you, Mom. You're the best. That's how your mom raised you. Okay. Nothing wrong with that. If that's your belief system, that's your belief system. Okay. Why you got imposed on Deion? And why is it Deion in particular who you are referencing? Because I've seen plenty of coaches in the past who've done the halftime or post-game interview. They still got their hat on. They've still got their sunglasses on. I've even seen some that still have the headset on from time to time. Very interesting, I must say. Barry Grant Jr. himself, the host of the Underachieving podcast with the Dummy of the Week segment, he just comments 2 digits. 81. He thinks they're going to drop 81 in Colorado. Wow. I thought I was going all in with 60. He thinks 81. I wouldn't put it past him. The way Shador in that offense go up and down the field. Now, the risk you run with that, obviously, is, God forbid, getting somebody hurt. I'm talking more from a play-calling standpoint. They're going to be aggressive. It's not going to be fourth quarter or they're up 30. They're just going to run the ball, kind of bleed the clock, get the game over with, move on to next week, just try and keep everybody healthy. No. They did make it personal. I love the fact, I really do, how threatened the college football world appears to be by Deion and by this this new attitude he brings to, not that Deion brings. Deion's always been this way, but this new vibe he brings to college football and how it's really threatening to a lot of folks out there. I don't know. I just you sometimes you ask certain questions like why is this so bad? I don't know. It's a valid question. That's all I'll say. Okay, sunglasses off. Actually, I'll keep the hat on. Who am I kidding? I'm a Steelers fan. Keep the Steelers hat on. I'll keep the hat on. I apologize. Not really, but Coach Norvell. There you go. So, again, I think Darion might still be dealing with some technical issues. So, we'll wait for him for another few minutes, and if he's not able to stop by, if the technical issues aren't able to be resolved, hopefully we can get him on next week or sometime in the future with the Vol View, but hopefully we can get on. So, anything else? Okay, real quick, I didn't think I was going to have a chance to talk about this, but since we have a little bit of time in our hands, let's go and get into it briefly. So, the NBA, let's see, do we have a comment here? We got a comment here? Okay, so Barry said Darion should be ready to go. So that's great stuff. Great stuff. Yeah, I can't wait to get him on for the Vol View because Darion's a Tennessee fan, big Tennessee fan. He's done a great job at the network. Since he joined, he's been doing live streams on the Gryd of like big night games. So he did opening night Lions and Chiefs. This past Saturday, he did Texas-Alabama, live stream that game, reacted to it, and then did the same thing on Sunday Night Football with Cowboys and Giants. I think that game, I may have to check YouTube, was the highest rated live on the Gryd network that we've ever had in the almost a year history of the Gryd. So congratulations to Darion. By the way, I should have known this. I should have known this as one of the founding members of the Gryd. We should be coming up on our 1 year anniversary pretty soon if we haven't hit it already. Because listen, the Gryd, for those of you who don't know, was an idea years ago. But we didn't officially launch it until last September. Because, see, I remember announcing I was a part of the Gryd after week 2. I'm going to have to go back and look at that because we may need to do something special now to think about it. I know, Barry, you're watching, and anybody else from the Gryd Network or anyone else who watches the Gryd Network and consumes our content, I think we have to do something special for a 1 year anniversary. Something. Because we've seen a lot of growth. We've added new faces, new people, like Parnell and Devin. Dalton's been added to the Gryd, and obviously Darion now. So, by the way, the Outside the Cage guys have done a spectacular job. Added those guys. So, I don't know. I'm brainstorming right now. What could we do for the Gryd 1 year anniversary? Could we do maybe do something with Darion, do like an NFL live stream show, something like that. I don't know, but it looks like Darion's ready to go. So without further ado, the next guest for Carving Up Live and for the Vol View, before we get to Darion, sit tight, Darion. Let's get into it. We just lost Darion. Oh. Dang, I don't know what happened there. We just lost Darion off the stream briefly. Hopefully we can get back on. Let's see. What I was talking about the Gryd. Yeah, we may need to do like a live stream reaction type show with Darion. So there you go. Let's see. John says pie ears. You mean pie eating contest, John? A pie eating. That'd be interesting. That would be a pie eating contest. Huh. What does the winner get, though, John? That's my question. Because if we're going to do something like that, as messy as that can be, what's the end goal? Is it bragging rights? Because bragging rights is fine, but see me, when I do bets with people, I don't bet money. That's why the segment of my show is literally called If I Were a Betting Man in regards to money. But in terms of pride, in terms of whether it be a jersey, because I've made bets in the past where certain individuals have had to do Southern accents, because I'm obviously from Tennessee, and I've had to do New York accents, or some people have had to wear jersey. I had to wear a freaking Lakers jersey after the Lakers beat my Warriors. That was a very painful day. It was not a fun show that day a few months back. It was not good. Not good at all. I did not enjoy that in the slightest. So, Again, while we wait for Darion to hop on, also a great opportunity to remind everybody. So, as I announced last week, we surpassed 200 subscribers within the last couple weeks on Carving Up Live. So, thank you to everybody who has taken 2 seconds out of their day and hit that big red subscribe button. We have a goal on Carving Up Live to get to 1,000. You heard that right. 1,000 subscribers by Super Bowl 58 on February the 11th from Las Vegas. And if you have not subscribed to to Carving Up Live, please do so. If you have, we appreciate that. Please hit somebody up, tell a friend to tell a friend to tell a family member to tell a friend to subscribe to the show. Helps the channel grow exponentially. Okay, it looks like we got Darion back on, so sit tight real quick, Darion, just for a moment. So a little later than usual, but nevertheless, it's the weekly segment on Carving Up Live, The Vol View. Here we go.
Football time in Tennessee.
And here we go. I've got Darion Hopkins, the newest member of the Gryd Network, joining Carving Up Live. Also a fellow Tennessee fan for the Vol View. Darion, my man, how you doing?
I'm doing great, man. I'm doing great. Sorry for if the audio sounds crazy.
Sounds great.
I'm trying to. I just got the new Rode X, the Streamer X thing. So
yeah,
I just invested in that. So hopefully it sounds pretty good so far.
Sounds perfect. No, it sounds great, man. I appreciate you coming on the show, obviously, for the Vol View. It's our first guest ever on this segment, so you have this distinguished honor. I love your background there, by the way, of Neyland State. That's very fitting.
Of course. I was trying to I didn't want to run and go get my hat and my gear real quick, so I just threw on something just to make sure we could get this thing rocking and rolling. Absolutely.
Now, first of all, before we get into Tennessee and their big game this weekend against Florida, obviously very hated rival, talk about sort of how you. I always ask new guests this: how you got into sort of the podcasting and content creating space, and obviously I know you're a Raiders fan, you're a Tennessee fan, like just kind of how you got into this sort of space.
I got kind of to this sort of space when it came to just debating with my family, sports debates with my family, and somebody stated like, oh, you should do a podcast, talking about how you feel about, certain players or certain teams and stuff like that. And that I just decided to do it. I decided to do it. I started back in 2016.
Wow.
Yeah, 2016. I've been around for a bit now. So been a lot of rebranding, a lot of things just been going on, but I have a separate channel for Nothing But Raiders podcast, and I just have one just for all sports, which is the Darion Hopkins Sports Show. We're supposed to do one today, but unfortunately, work, everything else, and I know we had this today, so I just canceled it. But it's been a long road doing live play-by-play commentary, live play-by-play and reaction stuff. So it's just been a lot of work, basically, a lot of work to get where I'm at. But hey, I still need to grow. I still need to go. And I'm happy to be a part of the Gryd Network. So that's definitely awesome, for me to be a part of this group, man. And finally got some Tennessee Vol fans around, man.
Yes, sir.
Oh my God. Like I see all basketball Vol fans, but football Vol fans, I can't find. So when, Barry told me that you was a Vol fan, I was like, oh, thank you, God. There are some out there that I can actually talk Vols football with.
For sure. Listen, when Barry hit me up and was like, hey, man, go check this guy's content out on like Instagram and stuff, and he was telling me like, hey, he's a Vol. So I'm like, okay, I don't need to see this. I'm sold, okay? I didn't have to see your content after that. Like, I'm sold. You do a great job, man, and it's obviously very exciting to have you here on the network. So, by the way, it looks like we got a comment from the Gryd Network here real quick before we get into the Vol View. Monday, September 18th starts Gryd Appreciation Week. Please join us all weekend with our great content creators as we celebrate 1 year of the Gryd Network on the 18th. Very exciting. So, like I said, you're one of the many new people that we've added since we started this network a year ago. Very excited to have you. So, without further ado, this is the Vol View. So, we're talking all things Tennessee football. So, they're coming off of a 30-13 win over Austin Peay last week. Obviously, a game in which I think Tennessee was favored. I think it was by 48 38 or something crazy. Obviously, a rough offensive performance, particularly in the first half. Joe Milton, the receivers, just didn't seem to be on the same page. It was a rain delay or a lightning storm delayed game there in Knoxville at Neyland Stadium for the home opener, and just didn't look particularly great on offense. On the bright side, however, defensively, front four, front seven as a whole looks great through the first couple games, albeit against lesser offensive lines. Now you go on the road to Florida, a team that's lost to Utah, took care of their second game of the season at home in Gainesville, and in a spot where Tennessee has not won since I was literally an infant in 2003 in Gainesville at the Swamp against the Florida Gators. So overall, Darion, your outlook on this game, what's sort of the keys in your mind to Tennessee getting a victory and moving to 3-0? Oh, yeah, I don't hear you right now. Your audio's out. Let's see. Maybe do you have an unmute button potentially? Let's see. Because you're unmuted here on this streaming app. So, is it out? Is it not? Is it not working? Okay, so I'll take you off. I'll bring you right back on as soon as you get that sort of resolved there. Darion Hopkins hopefully will be able to get that fixed. But his mic sounded great. I don't know what's going on there, but. Listen, we can hopefully get him back on as soon as possible. And by the way, Darion, whenever you're ready to go, just give me a thumbs up, and I'll obviously bring it back on. But no, listen, for me, the keys to this game for Tennessee is, listen, you're obviously playing a Florida team that's unranked. Billy Napier hasn't exactly had the most successful of 10 years thus far as the Florida Gators head coach. So this is going to be something that they've got this kid, Graham Mertz, who's their quarterback, didn't look all that great against Utah, had his moments from time to time last week in Florida's win. Who did they play? They played McNeese, again, 149-7. So it of course, they're supposed to be McNeese. Florida sitting here as 1-1. Obviously, again, they tend to. I've talked to a lot of Vols fans this week. They tend to be they tend to play their best football against Tennessee. So that's always been something that's they've been great at. So. That's kind of the game you sort of wake up for if you're the Florida Gators. So for Tennessee, look, my thing for Tennessee's offense is the fact that you've got Joe Milton, you've got this receiving core that's really good. You got Ramel Keaton, you got Brew McCoy, you got Squirrel White, you got Thornton, and you've got an excellent running game. Something that I think we don't give enough love and enough credit to for Tennessee is the fact that in terms of their running game with guys like Jabari Small, Dylan Sampson, Jalen Wright, these are guys who can get into the second level of defense. This is an offensive line that's been one of the better run blocking offensive lines in the SEC for the last, obviously going back to last season and going into this season now. So something to sort of take the pressure, take the load off of Joe Milton's shoulders. Again, this is Tennessee's first true road game coming into this new this new college football season. They played what's technically a neutral site game against Virginia in week 1. That game is played in Nashville. It's the Music City. I love Nashville, by the way. That was a Tennessee Vols home game. You could see it by the crowd. It was just coated in orange and white. So that was a Tennessee Vols home game. And then obviously a home game last week against Austin Peay. This is a situation where, listen, and I think I echo Tennessee and Florida fans for that matter when I say there are teams in sports, particularly in college sports, even in this instance, where you don't necessarily hate them, but you don't care too much for them. I mean, I don't like Missouri. I don't like South Carolina. I don't have a deep hatred for them. Like, oh, God, we got to beat them. I don't like them. But there's certain teams, and I'll extend it to my other, I'm a Steelers, Warriors, Red Sox fan. Let me tell you something, folks. I hate the Cleveland Browns. As a former Cowboys fan, I hate the Philadelphia Eagles. I have a deep hatred for the New York Yankees. And I hate the Florida Gators with a passion. Hate them. It broke my heart a lot. And finally now, because my rule that I've had for Carving Up Live for a while, that a rivalry is not a rivalry if it's one-sided. So Alabama, 15 straight years beating Tennessee. There was a stretch where Florida beat us 11 straight times, and then I think, 17, 18, 19, 20. So then 5 straight times with that. So Florida at one point won 16 out of 17 against us. We got them last year at Neyland. If we get them now in the Swamp, it's now officially back to being a rivalry, Tennessee-Florida. It's a real thing now. And so this is a big opportunity for Tennessee to kind of stamp that moment. Again, Tennessee's 11th ranked in the country on the road against Florida. Again, obviously, Tennessee was as high as 9th last week. The underwhelming performance against Austin Peay dropped them a couple spots. But if you go on the road, I know Florida's not the cream of the crop of the SEC in a conference that we know is as loaded as it gets when it comes to what they can bring and what they can offer. But at the end of the day, listen, this is a Tennessee Vols team. This is a Florida Gators team, rather, that's got SEC talent. Their front four is a little bit of an area of concern. Whether or not Cooper Mays, really good interior lineman for Tennessee, whether or not he's back is going to be key for the Vols. But this is a game that's going to be all about keeping the pocket clean for Joe Milton, giving him a solid running game, and whether or not the timing is back between Milton and his weapons, whether it's, does he overthrow a guy? Does somebody run the wrong route? Is he just miss a guy on a simple layup type throw? That's going to be the question for Tennessee, and in terms of winning this football game. They're a 5.5-point favorite, and for a while now, I don't know if I probably did it on this show at one point or another. I certainly did it to those in my life, especially Vols fans, like, we got Florida. Tennessee by 20. I'll back off the Tennessee by 20. However, if we have the score right here, I'm going to go with the Vols to win this game outright. Give me Tennessee 34-20 over the Florida Gators here in week 3 of this college football season. Tennessee will move to 3-0. Tennessee will get Florida again. Okay, 2 straight years. Listen, Tennessee hasn't gotten Florida in back-to-back years since I guess it was 03-04 was the last time they went back-to-back, beating Florida 2 straight times. So that's something I feel confident about. So for the Vol View, again, I'm not sure we'll be able to get Darion back on the show, unfortunately, which is obviously unfortunate. But hopefully we can get those audio issues taken care of. And we can get him back on the show sometime in the future. If he ends up hopping by, we'll have him on. You obviously want to treat our guests well here on Carving Up Live and as well as on the Gryd. Oh wait, Darion's back. Okay, Darion's back. So let's hold on. You know what? We didn't give him a drum roll like we give most guests. So let's go and give Darion the drum roll here. Darion's back on. Darion, can you hear me? And can I hear you?
I can't hear you now. So can you hear me though?
I can hear you.
Yeah,
so
I got it. Yep. Oh, here we go.
Okay, so let's see if you can maybe read my lips a little bit here. If I could I don't know, put a banner up. Let's see. Can you hear me now? You got your headphones on?
No. I can hear you now.
You can hear. Okay, great, awesome. So, no, I was just asking you. So, what's sort of your keys to the game for Tennessee to beat Florida? I just put up my final score. If we could put it up right here, I had Tennessee 34-20 over Florida. I think if you keep the pocket clean for Joe Milton, if the timing's better for the receivers, the defense can kind of dominate this football game, and the offense cash in when they get the opportunity. But what's kind of your keys for Tennessee to break a long streak and not beating Florida in 20 years in the swamp?
Well, for me, I think we need to run the football effectively with Jalen Wright and Jabari Small. I think it really starts there first, because if you look at our first 2 games, when we established the run, it's easier for Joe Milton to throw the football. So for me, I like Jabari Smith and Jalen Wright is really the probably the lead guy in my opinion. Even though I like Jabari Small a bit better, but if you look at the last couple of weeks, Jalen Wright has been carrying the load majority of the time. But those two as a tandem, I like them. Defensively, we just gotta play better defensively. It's just like one thing about our Vols defense, we just don't play well, and it's always high scoring with our defense. If we could keep Florida under 20 points and run the football and have Joe Milton come off the play, not really a play action, but what the quick wide receiver screens, get the ball out of his hands very quickly, and get these guys to get the yards after the catch. These guys will probably have more than 34 points. If we could go back to last year, we look at all the games that we had, high scoring, but our defense on the other side gave up too many. So if we could give up less than 20, if we could score 34, 37, almost 40 points, then I think we'll be good. But I do like your score 34-20 just for realistic basis.
Yeah, and listen, in Tennessee's defense, though, when you have Josh Heupel in this very, high-powered, moving, hurry-up offense that Tennessee tends to run with guys like with Hendon Hooker, obviously last year, now with Joe Milton, some of these fast wide receivers and offensive linemen, running game, that is something that your defense can be on the field for 2/3 of the game. That's going to be something, fatigue sets in, and that's going to be something that concerns me a little bit in terms of the pass rush, because I think the secondary is definitely the weakness of that defense. So the best cure and the best remedy to that is a good pass rush, is putting yourself in a position where the quarterback on the other side doesn't beat you with long throws down the field. And obviously, as we remember from, I guess it was 2015, remember Antonio Callaway on 4th down, making that play against Tennessee and taking that to the house. Yeah, so yards after catch is obviously something that has haunted Tennessee in the past in Gainesville. So as far as your overall outlook, so I like Joe Milton. I think his talent is off the charts. I think his ceiling is that of he reminds me a lot of Josh Allen. So he's not quite as mobile as Josh Allen was at Wyoming, but massive arm. Accuracy is a little bit of a concern. Sometimes confidence can go back and forth. What's sort of because college football is, just the Pac-12 is loaded with great quarterbacks. Where do you think Joe Milton kind of fits in with those guys, and how your sort of outlook on him going forward the rest of the season?
I think you gotta put him in situations where he gotta take what the defense gives him, even though his arm, like you said, his accuracy is not really there. So when a guy is still working on his accuracy, you gotta take, as a quarterback, you gotta take what the defense is giving you. So with Joe Milton in his style of play, I mean, you probably got to get him in part of that running game as well. He's not as athletic as hitting Hooker was, but if you get him a part of that running game, it probably helps him out in the passing game. He could throw the deep ball, but his accuracy, he can be inaccurate on the deep ball. But on the wide receiver screens, those quick slants on third down situations, he could hit those. So you got to take what the defense is giving you, and Joe Milton can't force nothing down the field. We don't want to force. We'll love the deep ball. That's one thing about us. We throw the deep ball very well in Tennessee, but it's a little bit different now because Joe Milton is kind of inaccurate in certain spots of the deep ball, like on skinny posts or even on a 9 route or something of that nature. But if you take what the defense is giving you in the short and intermediate routes, over the top would be better, and you would be more comfortable throwing the ball that way. So with Joe Milton, I think he could be a Heisman, possibly a Heisman Trophy winner or a Heisman candidate. But he has to play better at the quarterback position, and you got to get better every week. Especially, he could be one of the guys that beat Florida in Gainesville, which we haven't done in a long time. So I'm looking forward to seeing what he does on Saturday.
I absolutely am as well. And that's sort of, you were talking about, taking what the defense gives you, and that'll open up for the long game. That plays into something you said as well earlier, too, about giving him a run game, and that's something we think about Tennessee. They're this quick offense, a lot of shots down the field. I mean, I guess the lasting image that most of America has of Tennessee is Jalen Hyatt running wide open down the sidelines against Alabama last year. But we often forget, like you mentioned, how good the running game is to open up those deep passes down the field, and whether or not, Joe Milton overthrowing guys because of his insane arm has been a little bit of a concern, even dating back to 2 years ago when Hendon Hooker actually replaced him when Milton was the starter in 2021. That was something that kind of plagued him. So whether or not they can get that lined out is going to be obviously something that's huge for Tennessee. As far as listen, I think I went on a pretty good limb saying that I thought Tennessee would be the third-ranked team in the country and make the college football playoff. Maybe that's a little too much, but listen, I think the offense is good enough and the defense is improved, even as good as the SEC is. I still think Georgia's the class of that SEC East. Do you have a similar opinion, or do you think maybe Tennessee does win the East, go to the SEC title game, which they haven't done since 2007? What's sort of your outlook on Tennessee as it comes to the rest of the SEC?
Well, it's really going to come to the test when we play Alabama, when we play Georgia. I think we got Georgia on our schedule, if I'm not mistaken, right?
Yep, Georgia, second to last week of the season in Neyland.
Alabama, yeah. So I think those two games will really put us to the test if we deserve to be in the playoff or not. That's just my personal opinion. I would love to see Tennessee in the playoff. I think we had that chance until Hendon Hooker went down last year. But I do like Tennessee. If they do, I like them as the number 4 in the college football playoff, or a little bit outside of it. And I'm just being realistic with you. If we could knock off at least one of those teams of Alabama or Georgia, I mean, as the sky's the limit, I think that would really push us to get into the playoffs. I mean, in the college football playoff, if we knock one of those teams up. Because if you look at the rest of our schedule, it's not too bad. I think they're accountable, like winnable games outside of Alabama and Georgia. So, I mean, if we could get the job done with one of those teams, I think we can make it to the playoff, or at least be number 5 on the outside looking in and have a big bowl game.
For sure. Listen, what would be better is if they split, because I agree with you. I think they'll split those games. What would be better is actually if they lose to Alabama, beat Georgia, because they beat Georgia, they're in the SEC title game, with an opportunity to win in Atlanta and really bolster your case. Maybe, you win the SEC title game. That would almost, the worst case scenario, put you as the number 2 in the country. I don't know. Maybe we're just crazy Vols fans. Maybe we're getting a little bit too greedy, given the...
No, I agree with you there, though, man.
For sure. Given the successes of last season, around the rest of college football, so obviously we had Texas, Alabama, which is a very entertaining game. Texas went on the road to Tuscaloosa and winning. You actually live streamed that game here on the Gryd, did a great job, in doing so. as sort of your outlook on college football, do you have a Final Four teams in college football? Like you're looking at, hey, here's who can make the playoffs. Is there any shock to you thus far? I mean, Colorado's been the story of college football through the first couple weeks. You could talk about Colorado, obviously, but is there any surprises to you, throughout the first couple weeks of this new season?
I'm gonna be completely honest. Miami.
Okay,
I think Miami is back. I really think Miami is back, and they slowly getting back to their form of football. If you look at the last couple of weeks, they have dominated their opponents. And another one, Florida State. I think Florida State, when I saw them against LSU, they looked pure dominance. I think is what is his name for the quarterback? I just said it not too long ago.
Hold on, I'll help you out here. Let's see.
Oh my God!
Because you're right. They just beat Texas A&M, and they played actually last night and beat Bethune 48-7.
It was Jordan something. I know his first name is Jordan.
You talking about Miami's quarterback?
No, Florida State's.
Jordan Travis. I'm sorry, I thought you meant Miami's
yes.
quarterback. Yeah.
Yes, Jordan Travis. I think he's going to be a great prospect going into the NFL. I think he's a junior, if I'm not mistaken. But if he's not, I think he has another year under him. I think he's going to be good. Drake May at North Carolina. I think they're going to be. I don't think they're going to be a top 4 team, but I can see them being a little bit in that top 10 and getting a bowl game against a very, very good team that's in that top 10. But I do like North Carolina. Of course, Texas is going to be in the SEC next season. So as a Tennessee fan, I am looking forward to that, because it's been times I said that I'm not a big fan of Texas because Texas was so bad, but now they're playing to try to get into the playoff. But if I were to put 4 teams in the playoff right now, Georgia would be my number 1. Of course, because they're the national champions. Number 2, I'm not a big fan of the Big Ten. I think the Big Ten is a pretty weak conference as of right now, but I have to put Michigan there, unfortunately.
We agree in number 1 and 2. We agree in number 1 and 2.
1 and 2, 3. People going, a lot of people know, like I just said their name. Florida State's going to be number 3. If they keep winning and they win the ACC, they will go to the playoff. If they can remain undefeated through this whole thing, and I know they have to beat Clemson. But I don't think Clemson is that great. I think Florida State is a team that could beat Clemson and go undefeated and be that number 3 team in a college football playoff. And the number 4 team that I want in here, I'm gonna go with a dark horse, and that's Colorado. Colorado makes it to number 4.
Colorado. Wow. Okay.
Colorado makes it to number 4 because I got a feeling they're going to upset USC. I have this feeling they can upset USC because I feel like the hype around Caleb Williams is going to be the distraction on why they lose this game. They all talking about, Caleb Williams might back out because of the Arizona Cardinals might have the number 1 pick and all that. That's going to be a distraction in itself. So, and USC doesn't play any real competition in the Pac-12. I'm just going to be completely honest.
Pac-12 is pretty good, Darion.
I don't know. I was never a big fan of Pac-12. But I mean, UCLA, they're not the same like they used to be. Stanford's not what they used to be. Oregon. I think Colorado might beat Oregon. They might be the only one. Colorado might be the only one-loss team in the college football playoff. I think they get over Alabama, and I think Alabama loses another game this year too. I think they have 2 losses on their schedule. So I have Georgia, Michigan, Colorado at 4, and Florida State at number 3.
Okay, so let's see. So I would probably take Michigan to beat Florida State, and then in all likelihood Georgia beat Colorado. So we get a Georgia-Michigan game. Because that's my national championship. I'd have Michigan winning. Who do you got if that matchup occurs? You got Georgia?
I got Florida State going to the national championship and beating Michigan.
Nice.
I like Florida State versus Georgia.
I like it. Two teams down south. That's good. I like that. By the way, we got a comment here from the Gryd Network, also known as Barry. We have to let Darion go from the Gryd on behalf of Barry Grant Jr. He's obviously a big USC fan, so he didn't like that. He didn't like that comment.
I know. Listen, unfortunately, if the distractions get away from Caleb Williams, I would change my pick. But all the distractions around him going to the NFL, and I don't know. I just feel like I don't see USC winning a national championship right now. I just don't see it. If they do get in, they have to beat Colorado and Oregon to get in. I don't even know if they play Oregon this year, but they're going to have to. I think they play them in the Pac-12 championship, right? If I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
Whatever. However that happens with that conference. But if I did have to take out Colorado, and I'm sorry, Barry, it won't be USC again. It will definitely be Texas. I will put Texas over USC right now. So I'm sorry, if you have to give me my pink slip right now, Barry, it is what it is. But I mean, I gotta see that USC defense against a high power offense.
Yeah, that's Alex Grinch, defensive coordinator there. That's been a big area of concern, ever since he's been paired with Lincoln Riley back to the days of Oklahoma and now. And no, I think Texas is a better football team than USC. I just think because I had USC as my number 4 team, just because I think Caleb Williams is a generational talent at the quarterback position, and he's obviously gonna be the front runner in that 2024 draft. Whether it's with the Arizona Cardinals or with somebody else, he's going to be and continue to be a problem at this level and at the next level. So real quick, so rapid fire, and then we'll get you out of here. So this is something we're introducing now to the Vol View. So 3 sort of rapid fire. And you can obviously elaborate on why you have the answer that you have. But 3 Tennessee questions from personal experience from you in your opinions. So first question would be your favorite Tennessee football game that you remember. Like what's the game you're like, oh man, that's it right there.
I'm not going to lie to you, even though that we lost this, but when we played Purdue in the Music City Bowl, I think is one of the best bowl games.
That was a good game.
That was one of the. I actually live streamed that game, and I was so upset on how we lost that game. I was so mad how we lost that game.
The bad spot.
And you know what's funny? Aiden O'Connell was the backup for the Las Vegas Raiders, and now he was with Purdue when he played. He scorched our defense. So that's just one memorable game when we lost. In the Alabama win. The Alabama win was so emotional for me when I went into my friend's group chat and I went when I say I was yelling at the top of my lungs when we beat Alabama. It was sweet. It was sweet. It could get no better than that. And I just hope we keep that. We hope we get a winning streak going now because it's been 20 years since we beat Alabama.
Almost, yeah.
So yeah, I was so ecstatic with that.
No, that's absolutely at the top of my list. Tennessee beating Alabama. That was I'm right there with you. I barely could speak the next day. It's a good thing I didn't have a Carving It Up live. The next day, on Sunday, because man, my voice was absolutely shot, dude. I wasn't even at Neyland Stadium, and it was that was just an unbelievable night. Beating Alabama and ending that streak. So, next question would be your first Tennessee Vols memory. Like the first thing that comes to your mind, like okay, that's that I first remember kind of being a Tennessee fan. What comes to your mind there, Darion?
People might be shocked about this, but when I first found out about is it Vols football or just be Vols in general?
It can be Vols in general. It's the Vol View.
Okay, so it's when I first heard about Nikki McCray and Shamiqua Holsclaw.
Oh, okay.
When I first heard about Tennessee women's basketball, because they was always dominant.
Oh,
and it was always on TV. That was the one thing. It was like, that's the school I want to go to. Because I saw the culture of their basketball program at the time, but I saw the culture of their football program, hearing about Peyton Manning and all the legends that came through, being a Vol fan. But women's basketball really turned me on to Tennessee Vol sports in itself. So, because I'm a big advocate for women's sports. I
Absolutely
really am. And I coach little girls basketball, so I'm a big advocate of women's basketball. So watching them win their championships and even going all the way up to Kansas Parker, it even more. One girl that just got drafted, I forgot her name, but she just got drafted to the Seattle Storm. I forgot her name.
I know who you're talking about. Yeah.
She just got drafted to the Seattle Storm. But just the culture of Tennessee basketball in itself. Yeah, that's the first thing I fell in love with. And then I just started falling in love with, the softball, the baseball teams has been dominant. And, I've been watching the College World Series, which I think we should have won, but another story, another time.
Yeah.
But, watching Nikki McCray and, Shamiqua Holsclaw, and rest in peace to Nikki McCray as well.
Yes, absolutely, and rest in peace as well to the great Pat Summitt, who obviously coached those teams for a long time. And there was
rebound and defense.
Yep, rebound and defense. No, she was ultimate, fundamentals type of coach, and she was, very, very kind of old school in the sense of like she was very, kind of hard on her players. But at the end of the day, the players knew and the coach knew, obviously, that there was the mutual love and respect between both of them. And obviously, she had a ton of success there. And, there was a point in time where Tennessee and UConn had that rivalry. And it was kind of, who's the greatest coach? Is it Pat or is it Gino? And obviously, they had they had some battles over the years and obviously some great ones. And Pat is one of the all-time greats. And Tennessee women's basketball had some great players headlined by my favorite WNBA player, Candace Parker, for that very reason. So there you go. And final question. You sort of, I don't know if the answer will be the same as your the last question I asked, but I'll ask it anyway. Your favorite Tennessee Vols athlete?
That's tough. That is
it
tough.
Is.
Cause I could name Alvin Kamara. I could name Peyton Manning, but I'm gonna be honest. I'm gonna have to go with Candace Parker. I'm gonna have to go with Candace Parker. And Candace Parker, she was just a different breed. And the funny thing is, I watched her in high school.
Really?
In Illinois. So when she dunked in the McDonald's All-American slam dunk contest, and when I found out she was committed to Tennessee, I said we're winning championships with her. So you see how it turned out being there. So I'm gonna have to say Candace Parker. That's tough, but you got a lot of greats that came through Tennessee, but Candace Parker she's just different for her size and the way she could dribble the basketball. She could play all 5 positions on the basketball court. So she just makes a difference, and she really made a difference being a leader. Like she was the Pat Summitt on the floor when Pat Summitt was on the sideline. So yeah, I'm gonna have to go with Candace Parker there.
And I hope she's able to get healthy pretty soon to help the Vegas Aces. Obviously, the WNBA playoffs just started. Going. I obviously picked them to win the championship. So hopefully she can get back soon. That Vegas. Now, if we not to get out too off topic, we get an Aces Liberty WNBA finals. That'll be great for the WNBA and great for women's basketball as a whole. So that'll be an awesome series.
A lot of storylines in that situation too.
Yeah,
Becky Hammond is a New York Liberty legend, and she now coaches the Aces. So a lot of storylines in that.
For sure, and the stars are, you got Asia Wilson, Sabrina Ionescu, Brianna Stewart. That'll be an unbelievable series. Kelsey Plum. Okay, it'd probably be down to 3 for me. So I have to narrow it down to 1. So it'd be either Hendon Hooker, Admiral Schofield. Remember Admiral Schofield from Tennessee men's basketball? I love Admiral Schofield.
Oh my God, totally forgot about him.
God, this is hard, man. You know what? I'll have an answer for you next time. That's a hard question. Candace Parker's up there. Oh, man, I'm not going to narrow it down to 1 off the... Okay. Hendon Hooker. Just because he was the guy... He was the guy who helped us beat Alabama, obviously. He would have been the Heisman Trophy winner had he stayed healthy, and who knows what we've been able to accomplish last season. But I'll probably go Hendon. But listen, there's, like you said, there's so many great options. But Darion, before we get out of here, man, tell everybody where they can find you.
Well, y'all can find me on all social medias at The Hopkins Show and on YouTube at The Darion Hopkins Sports Show. And if you do want to check me out every Wednesday on the Gryd Network, the Raider Nation Roundup will be premiering on this upcoming Wednesday. So make sure y'all check that out on the Gryd Network. And Nothing But Raiders podcast every Tuesday on the YouTube channel. So y'all can check me out there on all social media platforms.
Absolutely, my man. Have a good one. Hopefully we can have you back on once again for the Vol View and for other stuff. You're a great addition to the Gryd Network, and you've already been doing a fantastic job with the streams and otherwise. So continue to do what you're doing, and hopefully we can link up again, my man.
Thank you again. I apologize in the beginning for the audio and everything, but it's all good. I'm here, and let's go Vols. Let's get this win.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Have a good one, Darion.
All right, you too.
Darion Hopkins, newest addition to the Gryd Network on Carving Up Live here. Obviously, love having him on. I never thought I'd have a fellow Tennessee fan on the network. So very excited. Like I said, when Barry was hitting me up, like, hey, we're probably gonna add this guy. Like, check out his content. I'm like, check it out. I'm like, oh my God, he's a Tennessee fan. Let's go. So yeah, there you go. So. That is the end of the Vol Report. The Vol View. About to get into NFL predictions, but signing off for the Vol View. Darion Hopkins and Bryson Carver. Tennessee 34, Florida 20. We're going to get it done tomorrow. Here we go.
in Tennessee.
The voice of John Ward, folks, never gets old. It never gets old. By the way, you guys might have noticed I'm drinking just a glass of water today because I normally drink Gatorade on this show, but I couldn't do that today because Gatorade was obviously invented at the University of Florida, and so I'm not. And anything that's anti-Florida Gators all the time, and especially this week, especially on Florida Hate Week. Oh, come on now. I'm not gonna be out here and praising the Florida Gators. I'm not gonna do that. And I just literally just spilled my water just now. So there you go. Hopefully that's not a bad omen. But I literally just spilled my water live on the show. So I've got backup though. So, and we got a towel. Thankfully, we got a towel. So I'm shocked that it doesn't have more often. But yeah, this is just spill my water on Carving Up Live. Here we go. But anyways, like I said, got a backup though. There you go. Got a backup. Okay, so. Now I've messed around talking about spilled waters and why I don't like Gatorade today. We've got a great weekend of NFL Week 2 action. So let's not even just mess around. We got upset of the week. We got If I Were a Bettin Man. We got the whole bit, man. So let's just go ahead and get the background music playing. And let's predict Week 2 of the NFL season right now here on Carving It Up Live. And we will start with the Las Vegas Raiders versus the Buffalo Bills. Buffalo, big favorite in this game. The line has changed, kind of fluctuated between like a half point-ish, something like that. Buffalo today, right now, is favored -8 over the Las Vegas Raiders. Again, the Bills coming out, it's a short week, coming off of a rough loss against the New York Jets. Obviously, Josh Allen having a 4-turnover game, rough performance overall for the Bills against a Jets team that, aside from 4 snaps, was not even playing Aaron Rodgers. The Raiders, Darion's Raiders, on the other hand, you saw Darion there on the Vol View, big-time Las Vegas Raiders fan. Raiders coming off a big-time road win on the road against the Denver Broncos, a game that I did not think they would win, although I did say it'd be close, and I think I took the Raiders the points for the record as well. But listen, this is a Raiders team with some really good offensive pieces. Devontae Adams, who could be, a bit of a problem for Buffalo's secondary, which has struggled at times. Devontae Adams is spectacular, and you got Josh Jacobs. You got some of those pieces offensively. An okay offensive line. But there's limitations at quarterback, and there's big-time limitations of the defense, and it's really why the loss was so bad for the Denver Broncos. I get it's a new system. I get it's Sean Payton. I get that Russell has clearly regressed, or dare I say, has been exposed from his time back in Seattle. Not to make this too much about Russell Wilson, but that is who the Raiders just played this past week. Josh Allen is obviously better than Russell Wilson. I think that goes without saying. The Bills have more of a structure offensively than the Broncos do. I actually will take the Raiders to end the points, but I'll take the Buffalo Bills to win this game. Again, this is one of our only big lines of the game. Buffalo, I think, wins this game 27-19 over the Raiders. And they take care of business at home. The home opener, by the way, for Buffalo. So there you go. They take care of business. They beat the Raiders, and they move to 1-1. Moving on to our next game, and it just so happens, right off the bat, ladies and gentlemen, to be my upset of the week. Give me the Baltimore Ravens over the Cincinnati Bengals on the road by a final score of 27-24. Second straight week, I am picking a road underdog to win this football game. And here's why. So, this is a divisional matchup. A lot of familiarity between the Ravens and the Bengals. Both teams coming off of underwhelming performances. In the case of Cincinnati, not just a loss, but a terrible performance against the Cleveland Browns, in which they scored 3 more points than you and I did. So Joe Burrow was bad in that game, a career low 82 yards passing, completed about 45% of his throws. The Bengals' rushing attack was bad. The offensive line was nothing, and I do mean nothing short of atrocious. Whereas for Baltimore, yes, they beat Houston. By the way, they did cover. Won a situation where they just barely escaped out of there. Home opener, took care of business against a young Houston Texans team. Here's the problem. They lost their starting running back, J.K. Dobbins, for the season due to an Achilles injury, and Ronnie Stanley, their fantastic tackle, is hurt as well. Not to mention Lamar Jackson didn't look all that great. This is a good Cincinnati Bengals defense, can present problems, particularly in the front 7. It's on the back end that they concern me. And by the way, for Cincinnati, it's the front 5, so to speak, the offensive line that I think is going to get absolutely torched and exposed by a solid Ravens pass rush. So again, I will take the Ravens to win this game 27 30-24 over the Cincinnati Bengals. Cincinnati, back-to-back years, they'll start 0-2. And back-to-back years, folks, it's no big deal. The Bengals will be just fine. I still think they will win the AFC North, but I've got the Ravens in my upset of the week to win 27-24 over... I'm sorry, the Ravens to win 27-24 over the Cincinnati Bengals. Moving on to the next game. This, to me, is easily, unquestionably, the most entertaining game for Sunday, if not all of Week 2 as a whole. The defending champion Kansas City Chiefs going on the road to Trevor Lawrence's house, to the guy who I think is going to win the MVP over Patrick Mahomes, Trevor Lawrence, Doug Peterson, the Jags as a whole. The Chiefs on the road are 3.5-point favorites, and for good reason. Listen. Andy Reid is historically great in September. So is Patrick Mahomes. Again, last week against Detroit was only his first Week 1 loss of his already incredible young career. And, of course, the Chiefs are getting reinforcements. Travis Kelce is back this week. As I said, a very swift recovery, if I do say so myself. See what I did there? Chris Jones also back. His holdout is over. Signed a contract that I don't think is terribly beneficial to him, when you at least we consider the fines he's accumulated for this holdout. But he's back. 1-year deal. He'll be there the rest of the season with the Kansas City Chiefs. Arguably is the best interior lineman in the NFL, not named Aaron Donald. And even when Aaron Donald's down, Chris Jones is the man. Now for Jacksonville, pretty impressive performance, albeit it was close, but again, divisional familiarity is a real thing. Indianapolis came in, months to prepare, played well. Jacksonville made the plays down the stretch. Trevor Lawrence was nothing short of spectacular, made some unbelievable throws to guys like Calvin Ridley and to Zay Jones, played outstanding. He's got targets like Evan Ingram, a solid offensive line. He's got Travis Etienne running the football. And listen, this is the only concern I had coming into the Jags this season in terms of them being a Super Bowl threat, and I did have them getting to the AFC title game and losing to the same Kansas City Chiefs, is it's a young defense. It's a defense that is it's a little green. It's going to take some time to, kind of build their culture, improve as the season goes on. But I think Jacksonville, I think it's going to be a high-scoring football game. Listen, I know Dallas and the Jets, and of course we assumed Rodgers was going to play in that game. I know that was CBS's big game of the week. Either they should have put this game on a different week of the schedule, or Dallas to the Jets a different time of the schedule, because no offense to any of the people calling that game whatsoever, but to me, the number one CBS team should have been on the call. Nance, Romo, Wolfson, this should have been the number one crew for CBS. This game is going to go down to the wire. I think Kansas City covers and therefore wins this football game 35-30. I think getting Kelce back. Kadarius Toney catches the passes that he dropped last week against Detroit. Sky Moore does the same. The offensive line plays better. I'm going to take Kansas City to bounce back. I just have a hard time seeing Patrick Mahomes starting a season 0-2, particularly when defending a Super Bowl title of all scenarios there. So Kansas City wins 35-30 over the Jacksonville Jaguars, and they go to 1-1, and the Jaguars also go to 1-1. And that very well could be the difference. I have Kansas City. I think I had them at 14-3 this season. I still feel good about that. I think this could very well be a type of game to decide home field advantage should these two teams match up, which I think they will in Arrowhead Stadium in the AFC title game. But two of the best three quarterbacks in the world going squaring off face to face. I cannot wait to see what happens to that one. Next, this is a weird one. The Los Angeles Chargers and the Tennessee Titans. Tennessee is a dog in this game at home. Chargers are 2.5-point favorites. And why, I'm not quite sure. Listen, both teams are 0-1, but Tennessee's problem was they couldn't score points. The Chargers' problem is they couldn't stop giving up points in their particular matchup last week against the Miami Dolphins. Listen, to be the quarterback gap between Herbert and Tannehill is obviously substantial. Justin Herbert is an incredible talent, has the entire package, just doesn't have the offensive coaching staff and personnel regarding Kellen Moore and everybody else involved. But the weapons there in LA are as good as it gets in the National Football League. Austin Eckler and Keenan Allen and Mike Williams and the kid they drafted, Quentin Johnson, out of TCU. Very good receiving core, very good. Josh Palmer's there, by the way, very good player. So the Chargers have that. Defensively, they have playmakers. They have Joey Bosa and Khalil Mack, and, well, I probably shouldn't say J.C. Jackson, given how he's looked since putting on a Chargers uniform. But they also had Derwin James as well, who's been an excellent safety since coming into the league, I believe, in 2018. Here's the thing that, to me, is the deciding factor. One team is coached by Mike Vrabel. The other team is coached by Brandon Staley. That decides it for me. I think it's kind of an ugly game. Listen, Chargers going on the East Coast, and those West Coast teams going to play these early time window games, these 1 o'clock games. In the case of Nashville, a noon game on the East Coast tends to not go so well due to the travel situation there. Titans win this one in an upset, albeit not my upset of the week, 23-17 over the Los Angeles Chargers. They get their first win of the year, and LA, who I do not have any faith in whatsoever. Why should I? They're the Chargers. They're going to start 0-2 on this brand new season. I never had them making the playoffs from the beginning, and this will be just another step in them missing the playoffs. Okay, moving on to the next matchup. Again, this is a tough one for me because of a lot of factors. It's the Green Bay Packers. It's the Atlanta Falcons, 2 1-0 teams in the NFC, neither of which we, if we're being completely honest, see as much of a playoff threat if they were to get there. Again, listen, Detroit's the class of the NFC North. That's undebatable. That's not even debatable. But Green Bay, listen, they can sneak into the NFC playoffs. I've had them at 6-11. Still don't think they're going to make the playoffs. Still am a little bit skeptical of Jordan Love. He did, after all, play the worst defense in the NFL last week. A defense that basically every quarterback imaginable succeeds against and looks good against. That's why Mac Jones not looking good against the Bears last year is an area of concern. That's not here nor there. Saying about Mac Jones, we'll get to him later when they talk about the Dolphins-Patriots game. In this one, though, again, Jordan Love comes off a very impressive first start, as not first start in general, but first start as the Packers franchise guy for the time being. Here's the problem for the Green Bay Packers that I'm a little bit concerned about, and something that the Falcons should obviously take advantage of in this football game. The Green Bay Packers are possibly for a second straight week going to be without Christian Watson, who's their number one receiver. Christian Watson, as we sit here today, is questionable to play this game against the Atlanta Falcons. He is dealing with, again, he's a limited participant list, is questionable, dealing with a lower body injury. Aaron Jones, who we saw get hurt during the Bears game, runs for that long touchdown on the short slant pass on 4th down from Jordan Love. He's going to the house. Ooh, and then he starts to grab that hammy. He's starting to run into the end zone. So he's listed as questionable for Sunday's game against Atlanta as well, obviously with that hamstring injury. For Atlanta, listen, this is a defense that has been awful for the last half decade plus. They addressed it in the offseason. They drafted defense, throughout most of the draft. They went out and got Calais Campbell, good veteran leader, good interior defensive lineman. This is going to be a game that's going to be all about A.J. Dillon for Green Bay. It's going to be all about Jordan Love's connection with Romeo Doubs. And with the kid, by the way, I like the young tight end they drafted. He had a solid game against the Bears as well. By the way, Atlanta is a 1.5-point favorite in this game, just for the record. This was almost Bryson's Bleak bet, but I actually saved it for later on for another NFC North team playing their game. I'm going to grit my teeth and say Atlanta actually wins this game and barely covers 22-20 over the Green Bay Packers. Again, Jordan Love's playing a substantially better defense this week than he played last week. And listen, I'm not a Desmond Ridder fan in the slightest. I'm not a believer that he's all of a sudden the guy for Atlanta, despite some of the pieces they have there. But I think because of the pieces they have there in Atlanta and because of the improved defense, they get the job done. They win their second straight game, both at home, both in my view against quarterbacks who are either limited or just aren't ready yet in the case of Bryce Young. So that's what I got. For our next matchup, two teams I had making the playoffs before the season, one of which I just so happened to have going to the NFC title game. It's the Seattle Seahawks. It's the Detroit Lions. For those of you wondering, it was the Lions I picked to get to the NFC title game, in case I haven't made that apparent enough on this show. Detroit at home opener. Ford Field, 4.5-point favorites against Seattle. So, Seattle's coming off of a brutal home loss in which they lost 30-13, I think the final score was, against the Los Angeles Rams. Matthew Stafford with virtually nothing. No Cooper Kupp, with guys like Tutu Atwell and Van Jefferson and Tyler Higbee's going up and down the field against a very talented Seattle Seahawks defense. It's a defense that was excellent last year, helped them get to the playoffs. So that's going to be something for Seattle that's going to be a big focal point for them, is trying to improve on a bad defensive performance against one of the best offenses in football. Listen, in what was a kind of an underwhelming performance for Detroit, in the fact that sure they scored 28 in the game, 21 of those points were scored by the offense. Brian Branch had the pick 6 against Patrick Mahomes to get the other 7. But this is a Lions offense that has Jared Goff, who's a Pro Bowl caliber quarterback. You have Amon-Ra St. Brown. You have Jahmyr Gibbs, who they did not use enough, in my view, last week in Kansas City. They will use him in this game against Seattle. By the way, too, this is a Detroit Lions defense that has vastly improved from last season, addressing it in the last 2 drafts, addressing it in free agency, adding guys like C.J. Gardner-Johnson, who played well against Kansas City, Cam Sutton as well, and Aiden Hutchinson showed flashes against a good Chiefs offensive line that he could be a problem. He was, after all, the second overall pick in 2022. Now he's playing a Seattle Seahawks offense that is missing some key offensive linemen. I think the Detroit Lions win this game. They cover relatively easily. Detroit wins 34-23. High-scoring affair for Detroit. 34-23, the Lions win and go to 2-0. They beat the Seattle Seahawks in this game by 11. Seattle falls to 0-2. Moving on to this next matchup, we've got in this game the Indianapolis Colts and the Houston Texans, a game that's actually recently had a new recent development regarding an injury to a quarterback in this one. So Texans for now are just a 1-point favorite at home. They might be without their young player, their young rookie quarterback, C.J. Stroud, second overall pick, of course, out of Ohio State. So it could be Davis Mills at quarterback for Houston. By the way, a guy who's been suggested as a potential replacement, of course, just for this season only for Aaron Rodgers in New York. So we'll see how that plays out. But Davis Mills is a solid backup. But Houston's a 1-point favorite, and Stroud is questionable. So listen, Stroud is obviously more talented than Mills, but again, he's only in his rookie year. It's only year 2. He's not this generational prospect like a Justin Herbert or like a Trevor Lawrence or Caleb Williams down the pipeline. So we'll treat this as if either of them are playing. So I don't think there's that big of a gap. I don't think it's going to affect the Vegas line too much. So Colts coming off of a hard-fought loss against the Jacksonville Jaguars. Anthony Richardson had some moments where the thing that caught me off guard the most was how comfortable he looked. Again, accuracy was a big problem of AR's coming out of Florida. He looked good. He looked comfortable. He was able to make passes on time and on target. This is a Houston Texans defense that has improved to a certain extent. Obviously adding DeMeco Ryans, who's a defensive coach, to be their head coach, and Houston has plenty of playmakers on the offensive side of the ball. The problem is, due to the injury with Stroud, if he does play, he'll be limited, and with Davis Mills, well, he was, after all, the starting quarterback that helped Houston get the number 2 pick, and what probably should have been the number 1 pick had Lovie Smith not tanked the last game against the Indianapolis Colts dated back to last season. So, a rematch of a game that the Houston Texans may or may not want to forget, but we'll see in that regard. So, I think it's going to be a low-scoring affair. Neither defense is special, but neither offense is special. Indianapolis could be special at the quarterback position. They just don't have that many good weapons. I like Pittman, but that's about all they got. And then as for Houston, they've got the weapons. Again, John Mechie, whether or not he'll be able to play in this game or not and make his NFL debut, I believe, will be a question. Damian Pierce, a good running back. It's a good enough Houston Texans offensive line against a defensive line like Indianapolis. I'll take the Texans. Again, there's a lot of lack of confidence picks for a guy in myself who's trying to bounce back from an 8-8 week 1, but I'll take Houston to win this football game in a battle of two teams who will likely have top picks next year in the draft once again. Houston wins this game 19-17. Neither team breaks 20 over the Indianapolis Colts, and they cover the 1-point line. It is now time for Bryson's Bleak Bet. It is the one game every week that I've absolutely zero confidence in, but hey, you got to predict them all when it's all said and done. In this one, I mentioned it'd feature an NFC North team. It is the Chicago Bears. It is the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Tampa Bay is a 2.5-point favorite here at home, coming off of a very impressive road win on the road against the Minnesota Vikings last week. Baker Mayfield played solid, didn't make any big mistakes, made a big throw to Mike Evans down the field in that football game. Their defense played well against a high-powered Vikings offense. Again, in a dome in Minnesota where offense should be going all over the place. Tampa Bay's defense, which still has a lot of guys from that Super Bowl defense, made some big-time plays in this one. Chicago, on the other hand, is coming off a pretty bad home loss at home against the Green Bay Packers at Soldier Field, 38-20, in a game in which Justin Fields didn't play particularly well. The defense looked just as bad as it looked last year, especially at the end of last season. And for the record, and this is something that I pointed out the next day on Carving It Up Live, and something that all these meme accounts pointed out days after I said it, if you check the tape, I'm not sure Chase Claypool, receiver for the Bears, knew that he was playing an NFL football game. I'm not quite sure he was aware of the situation, what was going on. The effort was as bad as I've seen from a receiver in a National Football League contest as I've ever seen. So you have to think the coaches maybe put a bug in his ear, or maybe the film put a bug in his ear in that regard, like, hey, dude, play harder. Okay, don't let the score impact how hard you play in this game. This is a big one for Chicago because this is a team that I had on the outside looking in, but barely in the playoffs. I had them with an 8-9 record. finishing third in the NFC South. Today, I think they look like, even with Minnesota being 0-2, unquestionably the worst team in that division as we sit here today. Listen, Chicago's going against a Tampa defensive line that is tough, but it's not elite. It's the linebacking core for Tampa Bay, guys like Devin White and Levante David, that are going to be the keys to attack for Chicago. I think the running game is going to be crucial. Absolutely crucial for this group. Whether or not they can attack it, guys like Khalil Herbert, obviously, and Justin Fields, of course, with his legs. This, to me, is going to be a run-first type of situation for the Chicago Bears. For Tampa Bay, again, there's going to be a lot of sort of overreaction betting in Week 2 of this NFL season because of what we saw in Week 1. Is it repeatable for a lot of these teams? Yes, absolutely. For some of these teams, like a Tampa Bay Buccaneers, I simply don't think it is. I still think Tampa Bay is just going to win 3 games this year. I don't believe in them whatsoever. Some heads are going to roll, some coaches are forcibly going to be fired, and they're going to be in the mix for Caleb Williams, or in my view, Drake May. Bryson's Bleak bets. Give me this Bears, I guess, but listen, it goes on the resume, it goes on the record sheet. Bears 25, Bucks 23. Bryson's Bleak bets. I'll roll with Chicago, I guess. Okay, now to the afternoon slate of games. It's an interesting one. 2 0-1 teams with 2 interesting outlooks on this game and the season. The New York Giants, fresh off a 40-0 waxing against the Dallas Cowboys on Sunday Night Football, and the Arizona Cardinals in their home opener, a team that I believe is going to win one single solitary game this week. Could that be this week against the New York Giants? Could it be? Well, you have to tune in, or stay tuned, rather, to find out. So, by the way, New York on the road, a 4.5-point favorite. Again, Arizona probably the worst team in the NFL. The Giants, though, looked like that last week against Dallas. Listen, Daniel Jones, I know a lot of people crushed Daniel Jones. Some of it well-deserved. He had a QBR of 8. I think he had a passer rating in the 20s, if I'm not mistaken. He was nothing short of miserable against a great Cowboys defense. That, I said the next day on the show after that game, I'm not sure how many quarterbacks, and I'm not a Daniel Jones guy at all, by the way, but I'm not sure how many great quarterbacks, or even good quarterbacks, of course, would have been successful against that Dallas front, given the offensive line that Daniel Jones had in front of him. It's no line that with Andrew Thomas, Evan Neal, I think it's fine, it's talented, but Dallas is just better. Dallas is faster. Dallas is bigger. Dallas is stronger. Dallas is better than the New York Giants offensive line. They took advantage of that. Danny Pennies, at least in this game, made some mistakes. So that's going to be something that he'll look to obviously bounce back on. Listen, the Cardinals that don't have an elite, they don't really have an elite anything when it's all said and done. They don't have a great defensive line. I actually think this game actually is close for kind of stressing out bettors who take the Giants to cover the spread. I love my man Joshua Dobbs. That's my guy. It was announced by Jonathan Gannon, who had a fire in his gut, that Joshua Dobbs is going to start in this football game. He does not have a regular season win on his resume yet, and he will not get one this week. Sorry to tease that for my fellow Vols fans. Sorry, Darion. Sorry, Vol Nation. Giants win this game by double digits. I'll take them 26-16 in an offensive bounce back. Literally scoring any points would be an offensive bounce back from a week ago. But Giants win this football game 26-16 over the Arizona Cardinals. In the next game, in which I almost took this one as my If I Were a Bettin Man segment, but I was like, I'll pull back. It is the San Francisco 49ers. It is the Los Angeles Rams. San Francisco on the road against a 1-0 team that just won the Super Bowl 18 months ago. San Francisco is a 7.5-point road favorite. So really, if you do the math, they're the biggest favorite of this weekend because they're 7.5-point favorites on the road. The only other bigger favorites thus far are the Cowboys and the Bills, who are both at home. So there you go. So, San Francisco favorite minus 7.5. Again, I think this is the best team in the NFL on Bryson's best 10, which I did on Wednesday. I had them at number 1, followed by Kansas City, Dallas, and Detroit. Listen, this is, again, I know it may sound like I'm beating a dead horse. I don't know where the weakness is in this roster. I really don't. This is a roster that is elite in the backfield, elite at the offensive line, elite at tight end, elite at wide receiver, elite on the front four, elite in the linebacking core. I wouldn't say quite elite in the secondary, but Talanoa Hufanga, who had a pick last week on my man Kenny Pickett, he is absolutely elite. He's a Pro Bowl, all-pro level safety. He's elite. And while Brock Purdy's not elite, old Sturdy Purdy, as I dubbed him last December, he's sturdy, and sometimes even more than that. He's a good player. He's making it it's a hard case to not say he's dare I say, a top 12, 13 quarterback in the NFL, Mr. Irrelevant, who people look past that, or if people look past that, they'll see the fact that this guy is accurate, they'll see that this guy is mobile, they'll see that this guy is able to make plays in and out of a Kyle Shanahan offensive structure, which is what separates him from a Trey Lance and from a Jimmy Garoppolo, who of course the Niners thought would be their guy. Instead, it happens to be sturdy Purdy. Listen, if there was ever a game in week 1 that is a mirage, that is something that is not going to be repeated, it is the Los Angeles Rams winning back-to-back games. This is a Rams team that I have winning 7 games because they have a great coach in McVay, a guy capable, if he's healthy, of being a great quarterback in Stafford, a great defensive player in Aaron Donald still at this point in his career, and a great wide receiver, my twin, Cooper Kupp, who is on IR, of course. That performance is not repeatable. I know the game's being played in Los Angeles. I promise you, I'll guarantee you, this will be a Niners home game. Every time they play in SoFi, it's Niners by a lot in terms of the fan population there. I will take San Francisco to win quite comfortably, 38-20. Again, we know Sean McVay, while a great coach, cannot beat Kyle Shanahan, even when Kyle Shanahan's had some below average to even further down than that quarterbacks. He still has Sean McVay's number. He still gets the best of him. I think that will continue. Cincinnati. San Francisco wins this football game 38-20 over the Los Angeles Rams. To our next game. Might be the highest rated game of the weekend because of the 2 teams it features, in particular. 1, the New York Jets, the Dallas Cowboys. Cowboys, big home favorites, favored -9. So, the Jets have been, I think, undeniably the most talked about team in the NFL over the past 7 days, and certainly not for the reasons they thought they'd be talked about in regard to Aaron Rodgers. That has been the topic, but of course it revolves around him 4 plays into his Jets career, tearing his Achilles, being, I guess, done for the season, although Aaron's like, hey, Kevin Garnett, never say never. Who knows? Modern medicine is incredible. But the point is, the Jets will have Zach Wilson at quarterback, and that's not exactly a great thing. Here's the thing for Dallas. It's quite simple, actually. You got arguably the best defense in the NFL, although the defense of the Jets can make a strong case in that regard as well, but Dallas is the best, one of, if not the best defense in the NFL, led by Micah Parsons up front. You'll take care of business. You're going to take the ball away from Zach Wilson. I say they take away from Zach Wilson 4 times. Let's say 3 picks and a strip sack off of Zach Wilson in this football game. Here's the only way Dallas can lose. The only way Buffalo could have lost last week is if your quarterback makes boneheaded decisions, boneheaded mistakes, and commits boneheaded turnovers. Well, Josh Allen, that's kind of been his history. Dak Prescott, even the last year with the 15 picks in 12 games, that is not his history. Last healthy season, Dak Prescott only threw 10 picks in 16 games. I have no reason to believe that he will not bounce back. By the way, I think Dallas will run the football fairly effectively. Dak will be in a position to make more big-time throws. Again, he didn't have to make any big-time throws last week because they were up. I mean, he had one offensive drive, and Dallas was up 16-0 because of what they did on the defensive side of the ball and on special teams with the blocked field goal returned for a touchdown. Dallas wins this game easily. The only avenue for the Jets to win this football game is if Dak Prescott is the best quarterback for the New York Jets in that he turns the ball over multiple times. I think he has 0 turnovers. Once again, continue to shut up the haters and the doubters and those who, for some odd reason, don't see Dak Prescott as a top 8 quarterback in the NFL, if not just a bit higher with, unfortunately, the injury to Aaron Rodgers and now with Josh Allen going sideways. As well, Dallas wins 34-13. I put up the final score. I think I did. Dallas wins this football game 34-13 over the New York Jets. The last game in the afternoon window before we get to Sunday Night Football is the Washington Commanders taking on the Denver Broncos. Denver, they're favored -3.5. This is a must-win game for Denver. Listen, there are some 0-1 teams. Half the league's obviously 0-1. For some, if Kansas City loses to Jacksonville, okay, listen, you're working your guys back into the rotation. Kelsey, Chris Jones. It's Andy Reid. It's Patrick Mahomes. They'll be fine. They'll still win the AFC West. Nothing to worry about in Kansas City. You cannot say the same for the Denver Broncos. They had 2 home games to start the season. One against Jimmy Garoppolo. The other against Sam Howell. You cannot go 0-2 in those games. If you look at Denver's schedule moving forward, it is about as brutal as it gets, at least the schedule beyond just this football game, in which, again, they are favored, of course, to beat Washington. They have to go on the road to play the Miami Dolphins, who, I don't know if you've seen, are kind of red hot right now, albeit through 1 week, but that offense looks outstanding. They go on the road to play Chicago. The Jets is not a guarantee because of the fact that the Jets feel disrespected by Sean Payton. And listen, Zach Wilson may or may not be the quarterback in that game, but Russell Wilson is exactly an eye-popper when it comes to what he's produced over the last season. They got Kansas City on the road after that. Then the Packers, then Kansas City again. The upcoming schedule for Denver is brutal. They got to win this football game over the Washington Commanders. Listen, Washington has a good defense. They tend to have just that, especially defensive coach Ron Rivera. The man has not specialized in the offensive side of the ball, especially in the last few years, and especially at the quarterback position. But Ron Rivera defenses tend to be really talented, really good, really fast, and they tend to take the ball away. So that'll be a little bit of an area of concern for Denver's offense. However, this is Sean Payton. He'll have his guys ready to go. I actually will take Washington and the points, but Denver to win outright 20-17 over the Commanders. Russell, look, he played efficient. He didn't turn the football over last week. I actually do think he'll have one turnover in this game against Washington. However, what any big plays down the field? Could we see that against the Commanders? Maybe. I think we actually could. I'll take Denver to get a season-saving win, 20-17. They start 0-2 with 2 losses at home to Sam Howell and a Jimmy Garoppolo. Forget about it. Write the Broncos off. They done. So with that leaves us one game left in process of elimination. We haven't done this segment yet, so it is time for
Bettin Man.
We're a betting man. I'm looking at the Miami Dolphins, and I'm looking at the New England Patriots from Foxborough, from the house that Tom built, if you will. The Dolphins on the road are 3-point favorites against the Patriots. A Patriots team coming off of a moral victory against the Philadelphia Eagles. A game in which when Mac Jones threw a pick six, and not just any pick six, ladies and gentlemen, a pick six in which he throws the pass, it gets tipped. It was a bad pass, by the way, got tipped. Goes to Darius Slay. Here comes old Slay running down the sideline, and Mac Jones like, I'll let him score. I won't try and shove him out of bounds and save 7 points. By the way, we lost the game by 5 points. You think it might have actually meant something to the outcome of that football game? Actually, I think it ended up being 6. I think Elliott might have missed the extra point. Point is, gave up 6 to 7 points on that pick 6 to Darius Slay. And Mac Jones looked like a competent quarterback in the second half, albeit they attacked the middle of the field where the Eagles are very weak. But that's okay. Bill O'Brien did. He accomplished the game plan that he wanted to. Props to him. Albeit they lost the game. Miami, on the other hand, are flying sky high on the road against the Los Angeles Chargers. It was probably a Dolphins home game because the Chargers don't play any home games, as we know. It's the only team in the NFL that plays either neutral site or road games. But Miami goes into L.A. with a very talented team, although the Chargers, in terms of the talent of their players, if you look like their Madden ratings, probably match them player for player. Tua Tagovailoa showed me something that he did not show me most, if not all of last year. I don't know if it's because he put on some muscle. The dude, all of a sudden, has a cannon. Maybe not cannon, but an improved arm, certainly. With Tyreek Hill running down the sidelines, making plays. You have Raheem Mostert in the backfield. You have a good offensive line that did a good job in protecting Tua. He was able to make plays, moving in and out of the pocket. You have Jalen Waddle, who's a threat. Listen, I do not believe Bill Belichick is going to make the same mistake that Brandon Staley did, and that's, fastest player in pads on planet Earth, and we're going to leave him one-on-one, man-to-man coverage the entire football game. And what's Tyreek Hill going to do to you? Well, he's going to go for over 200 yards and 2 touchdowns. That's exactly what he's going to do against you. Listen, it's a Belichick-led defense. They will cause problems from time to time. No, I'm just kidding. They're not going to cause any problems whatsoever. Give me the Miami Dolphins to win this game easily. 35-23. They cover. -3 at Miami. Come on. If I were a bet man, I'm taking that any day of the week, as always. Man, take Miami. -3 to beat the New England Patriots. 35-23 in Foxborough. Patriots start 0-2. Moral victories don't count for real victories, Patriots fans, okay? Come on now. Thought the standard was higher than that. Jeez. Miami wins. By the way, real quick before we get out of here, look back over. So my upset of the week, I got the Ravens over the Bengals 27-24 in Bryson's Bleak bet. I've got the Chicago Bears over the Tampa Bay Buccaneers 25-23. And finally in If I Were a Bettin Man, I take the Miami Dolphins to start 2-0 to cover the spread, the 3-point spread, to win 35-23 over the New England Patriots. And you say, Bryson, you said Denver losing 2 home games to start their season is like it's season ending because the quarterbacks are losing 2. And New England's playing much better quarterbacks than 2 Alabama guys. Playing an Alabama guy, by the way. Mac Jones, Alabama guy, facing Jalen Hurts, former teammate, facing Tua Tagovailoa, also a former teammate. And they both going to get him. Hurts got him. Tua's going to get him good. Tua's going to get him in somewhat of a blowout fashion. Only concern a little bit is Miami is defensively, but it's Vic Fangio, so he'll have a game plan to stop what offense there sort of is in New England. I mean, I guess what is their second best offensive piece is Juju Smith-Schuster. It probably goes like Hunter Henry, Juju Smith-Schuster, Zeke. Okay. Good luck with that. Okay. What a show. We're nearing the 2 hour. We're probably, by the time I get to my outro, we're going to get to the 2 hour mark. I don't know the last time we've done that on Carving Up Live, but doggone it, we had a loaded show today. We had a lot to talk about. With that is all the time we have for today's show. Appreciate everybody stopping by as always. Be sure to catch Carving Up Live on Monday with a lot of Week 2 reaction and maybe some Tennessee, Florida reaction at 6 p.m. Eastern, 3 p.m. Pacific time, right here on Twitter, as well as the Carving It Up YouTube channel and the Gryd Network YouTube channel. And of course, be sure to like, share, comment, and take 2 seconds out of your day. Hit that big red subscribe button. Helps the channel grow exponentially. And be sure to go subscribe to the Gryd Network. That is GRYD, the Gryd Podcast Network, right here on YouTube, as well as any and everywhere you get your favorite podcast, be it Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Google Podcasts, any and everywhere you get your favorite podcast. Big shout out to Darion Hopkins, newest member to the Gryd Network, hopping on for the Vol View and to talk about other things regarding college football. You can catch his content in all the areas he detailed and laid out on the show at around the 1 hour mark. And he's doing some great live streams here on the Gryd Network, reacting to games as they happen. You don't want to miss them. People love them, so you don't want to miss them here on the Gryd. By the way, last bit of news as there we go, just surpassed the 2 hour mark. Put up this comment once again by the Gryd. Monday, September 18th starts Gryd Appreciation Week. Please join us all week with our great content creators as we celebrate 1 year on the 18th. There we go. Gryd launched that day, around that day. 2 years ago, or 1 year ago, rather. So we're going to celebrate all week on the Gryd Network, so definitely be sure to stop by. Great weekend of college football, great weekend of NFL football. Cannot wait. By the way, Colorado's hanging 60 in Colorado State. Tennessee's beating Florida 34-20, and it is going to be a great weekend. And Dak Prescott's going to go nuts on that Jets defense. You already know what it is, okay? It's Randy Dakota Prescott we're talking about. What are we kidding? All right, have a great weekend, everybody. Please continue to stay safe out there. Please be sure to take care of your physical as well as your mental health, and please be sure to contact your local state representatives and senators to demand change for gun violence in America. Got some great football this weekend. Can't wait. See y'all on Monday. Have a great weekend. God bless y'all. Peace out. And I'm drinking water today, not Gatorade. What are we talking about? Gatorade. Thanks so much for watching the show on YouTube, and be sure to go click that big red subscribe button and check out the other clips and full shows from Carving It Up Live, as well as our other incredible content creators here on the Gryd Network.